Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. Flash yourself back 23 years. Go ahead, I'll give you a second. There we go. It's a simpler time. Maybe you're my age. Back then, I was in like 4th grade. The Sony PlayStation had hits under its belt like Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and more. The Nintendo 64, not to be outdone, is the life of many a late-night sleepover with Super Smash Bros., Mario Party, Pokemon Stadium, and more. It's a beautiful time, man. And you know what else was going on around this time?
WWF No Mercy.
The game released in November of 2000 to rave reviews and to this day is considered one of, if not the greatest professional wrestling video games ever made. The end. I mean, that sounds like the end, right? That sounds like we just got to the bottom of this situation, but we didn't. Recognizing No Mercy as one of the greats is common sense, and not addressing its reputation at the very beginning of this video would have felt disingenuous, and that's not what I'm about. Today we're going to relive some memories, we're going to explore the creation and celebrate the expansive features of this title, and before it's all said and done, I guarantee you, you're going to want to fire up this classic one more time. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to the Season 3 premiere of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, if it feels like it's been a long time since we've had an episode of TXSO, it's because it has been a long time. Almost 2 years, to be exact. I've done over 30 in-depth wrestling game retrospectives. You are seeing them on screen. The links are in the description. You can go back and watch the old ones whenever you want, but we are here today to kick off a brand new chapter. And what better way to kick off a brand new era of Triangle X Squared Circle than with the game that many consider to be the greatest of all time, WWF No Mercy. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right to it. Now, normally, a retrospective on WWF No Mercy should go into the history behind its legendary development team, Aki Corporation. From WCW vs. NWO World Tour to WCW NWO Revenge, over to the WWF with WrestleMania 2000 and into No Mercy, their legacy speaks for itself. I've covered all of Aki's pro wrestling video games in depth on this very channel. Again, examples on screen and links in description. The WrestleMania 2000 episode of this show should practically be considered required viewing before jumping into this episode. I mean, WrestleMania 2000 came first. You gotta be up to date! So let's just assume you are up to date. Let's pretend it's mid-2000. WrestleMania 2000 was awesome, but it's in the rearview mirror. We're seeing commercials for the new hotness.
WWF No Mercy. Perform vicious double-team moves and show no mercy in a high-flying ladder match. WWF No Mercy for Nintendo 64. It doesn't get any better than this.
The hype train is speeding down the tracks. And if you're a PlayStation kid like me, who loved WWF SmackDown and is counting down the days to the release of WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, you're still a little jealous. The SmackDown games were awesome. They still are awesome. They hold up. They hold up better than most games ever made. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. But they don't have that Aki feel, man. In the SmackDown games, we were flying around the ring. Breakneck speed. No selling. That's not how it feels over on the N64 side of the fence. I'll get further into that comparison in a little bit. First, let's look at several of the brand new features WWF No Mercy gained that its predecessor, WrestleMania 2000, didn't have. Come on now, you think I'm not gonna gush about the addition of the ladder match? These were all the rage back in 2000, man. The Hardys versus Edge and Christian at No Mercy 99, Hardys, Dudley's, Edge and Christian at WrestleMania 2000. Let's be honest. These matches had us all jumping up and down like morons, screaming our lungs out for our favorite teams. To be able to craft our own ladder matches, to climb up to the top of a ladder and hurl ourselves off the damn thing like a maniac, It doesn't get any better than that. The suspense of the slow climb, the tension of reaching for the belt suspended high above the ring while your friends scramble to try and dash your dreams, untouchable. And No Mercy didn't simply offer a one-on-one ladder match either. Triple threat? Go for it. Tag team? Yeah, man. Book it. Setting the ladder down and slamming your opponent onto it comes with such a satisfying crash. And don't get me started on knocking the ladder over. I said I would talk more about the comparisons between No Mercy and SmackDown 2 later, but I need to touch on it just a little bit right now. Look, in SmackDown 2, which was also coming out right around this same time, ladder matches can be won in a matter of seconds. This never happens in real life. In SmackDown 2, we can't slam our opponents on the ladder, it slips out of the way. In SmackDown 2, striking a ladder that our opponent is on topples the ladder in the blink of an eye, with the opponent falling straight down towards the mat. This isn't what it looks like in real life. When you're watching wrestling, that ladder tips over, falling tree style, oftentimes with the wrestler riding it all the way to their doom. And you know what? WWF No Mercy lets you recreate this. I don't know how big of a deal this was to you, but to me, this was massive. But ladder matches weren't the only new feature. No way. Steel cage matches aren't exactly new, but the design is new. We've left the chunky steel bars of WrestleMania 2000 behind in favor of the more modern chain link look. The cage itself is comically tall, and once again, unlike SmackDown 2, we can interact with the cage during our matches by smashing a wrestler's face off the walls. Okay, I'm putting the SmackDown 2 comparisons away for a while, I promise. We gotta talk about how we can go backstage, dude! Now, is this the first time we could go backstage in a wrestling game? No, that was WCW Mayhem, but I've already talked about that, link in description. Dude, if we're talking about things that were all the rage back in 2000, the Hardcore Championship was in its prime in this era. Guys like Al Snow, Bob and Crash Holly, Big Boss Man, Perry Saturn, and more traded this thing on a nightly basis, and with the creation of the 24/7 rule, where the title was on the line literally every second of every day, this meant that new champions could be crowned anywhere. And again, WWF No Mercy lets us recreate this. Fighting in the hallway is limited, but possible. Irish whipping the opposition in the direction of a doorway leads us to a new setting. The parking lot has a cold, dirty feel to it, and fighting in the back of a semi-truck is something I don't think I've ever done in any other game to this day. Cross over to the bar, and not only is there a pool table that we can smash through like an announce desk, which is hilarious because pool tables have a marble base. This would literally kill somebody. But check out the awesome neon signs on the walls. Man, what I wouldn't give for one of those in real life. In the locker room, we've got more tables to break. Now, No Mercy doesn't have a table match, sadly. All of the breakable tables are set in predetermined locations, but there are tables to break. It's a compromise, to be sure, but at least they're here. We've also got a boiler room, but this is the least interesting area. What we cannot gloss over are the stages. The scale on display here is awesome. These stages feel massive compared to our wrestlers. And the colors, goodness me, the colors. Now, just because I'm showing up on camera right now does not mean that I've run out of new features to talk about. It doesn't mean that I'm switching gears. No Mercy introduced a robust story mode where every championship belt came complete with branching paths and new opponents, meaning multiple playthroughs would come with multiple endings. Let's take a look at championship mode. If you're looking to go after the World Wrestling Federation Championship, you can expect to be involved with top-level stars like Vince McMahon, Kane, we can compete in the Royal Rumble match, and all that good stuff. But setting your sights on the tag team titles or the European Championship proves that with every story comes its own cast. When chasing the Intercontinental title with Kane, the champion, Matt Hardy, was doing everything he could to keep his gold out of my reach. He paid the APA to beat the tar out of me, which is something that actually wound up biting him later. He threw Eddie Guerrero and Chyna in my way. Honestly, he stacked the deck like a true cowardly heel. At the end of the day, I massacred him inside a steel cage at WrestleMania and celebrated with my new belt in front of the sold-out crowd. But hey, round of applause for Matt Hardy for, doing his best, right? Now this is where we need to talk about something crazy. Look, many of you may know that with certain cartridge-based games, save files were not stored on a memory card. Oftentimes, save files would be stored on the cartridge itself. So let's say it's the first week of December and you rented WWF No Mercy from Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or whatever. Your 7 days are up, you gotta bring it back to the video store. The next person to rent this game is gonna be picking up your save file. So if you decided to make Gerald Briscoe the undisputed Eurocontinental light heavyweight hardcore tag team champion of the world, that next person is gonna load up the save and go, what the hell is going on here? And this is where Javon comes into play. Now I'm going to combine two topics here. Those topics being customization and Javon. Let's do the customization part first. One of my favorite things about No Mercy is being able to go in and edit every single wrestler's attire. Everybody has 4 unique looks and we can modify all of them to our heart's content. Remember in 2003 when Triple H started wearing colored trunks here and there? You're damn right I went in and gave him some colored trunks. I had to match his look on TV. When this game launched, Kane was still years away from losing his mask. But eventually, that thing came off.
Is that a human?
And I went into the editor and updated the Big Red Machine. Same deal with Kurt Angle's hair. See you later. This sort of freedom is beautiful, man. And yes, this feature had been around for a long time. We could do this in Aki's WCW games, but that doesn't mean it's any less cool. It's actually improved, too, as we're not just tied to simple legs, body, and head categories. We've got free reign to do elbow pads, knee pads, gloves, glasses. Come on, this is what I'm talking about. We're also able to move around the character select screen and name each collection of wrestlers. Having been a teenager during the draft days and a big TNA fan in the mid-2000s, I have my select screen all jacked up. We've got Raw, SmackDown, I've got a TNA group complete with a Jeff Jarrett and a Raven that I created. I updated the Dudleys to be Brother Ray and Brother Devon. And this is where I put people that I really didn't know what to do with. I should also mention the cool little detail that editing a certain costume will make it appear as the look used in the opening cutscene, so be careful which slot you choose for certain looks. And in that same vein, putting the title on a wrestler in exhibition mode means that's who's going to be carrying the belt in championship mode too, so be aware of how that can screw up the predetermined lines. Seeing someone like Undertaker delivering dialogue clearly written for someone like Stone Cold or The Rock is hilarious. But I've stalled long enough. Let's talk about Javon. Here he is on screen, or this is his created wrestler, at least. He's occupying the same slot as Val Venus though, so he's not even really a created wrestler, he's just an alternate outfit for Val Venus. Anyway, who is Javon? Javon is the person who owned this game before I did. Remember the save files stored on the cartridge conversation from earlier? Yeah, I didn't buy this copy of No Mercy brand new. I bought it used. I had a PlayStation growing up, and I didn't have my own N64 until, it was probably like 2007-ish. Javon here did a great many things in his day. He has left behind a legacy all his own, and a part of this legacy comes in the shape of the Naked Divas. Javon made sure that every female wrestler in the game, without fail, has a skimpy bikini attire, and he changed the color of the bikini to be as close to skin tone as possible. He even went as far as to change their display names. In case you were wondering what the hell we were looking at here, there it is, spelled out. Is this weird? Sure. Was Naked Midian weird? Yeah, absolutely, and that was real life. So maybe Javon was crazy, or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was inspired. Who's to say? At one point I changed Farouk's name to Damn because I thought it was funny. We've all got our own little touches. Some are just more graphic than others. Let's say you've edited the roster to your heart's content, though. You've experimented with every outfit you can imagine for Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mankind, and you are still wanting more. More wrestlers, more weapons, more moves. Oh my goodness, do I have news for you.
SmackDown Mall.
Now that's the sound we all know and love, the SmackDown Mall. Now my save file and Javon's former save file, has a number of things already purchased, so we're not looking at an untouched SmackDown Mall here, but you get the picture. Completing story mode paths and survival mode runs earns us cash that can be spent right here. This is where it all comes together. Expand your roster by purchasing the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Embody the world's most dangerous man by unlocking Ken Shamrock. We've got Earl Hebner, Cactus Jack, hell, even the Godfather's Ho is available to purchase here. And yes, the Ho is by far the most expensive unlockable in the entire game. It's not even close. Sifting through the unlockable moves offers a glance at many of the animations from Aki's WCW games, which is always fun. The weapons section of the SmackDown Mall is hilarious. I gotta have the cheese, right? The cheese! I do have a bone to pick with whoever is setting these prices, though. You cannot advertise a product as $800 shirt and then charge $80,000 for it. That's just bad business. And if that's bad business, let's talk about some good business. No Mercy still features my favorite Tombstone Piledriver animation to this day. The introduction of weight detection added an awesome level of realism. Watching Funaki struggle to lift Rikishi is cool. But you know what's cooler? When he finally gets the big man up. Hell yeah, Funaki. I touched on the opening cinematic earlier. We've taken a look at some of the cutscenes featured across the championship mode, but let's not forget the winning animations. Not everybody has one, but seeing Stone Cold hit the corners, Kane calling upon the fires of hell, and Too Cool dancing after a hard-fought victory, this is magic, man. It's magic. You'd play a tag match as Too Cool just to see this. I won't sweep the game's issues under the rug, though. There aren't many to speak of, to be clear, but we can't pretend that slowdown in some multi-man matches isn't a bit painful. Even with the addition of ladder matches and Iron Man matches, the game still is sorely lacking in gimmicks when compared to its PlayStation counterpart, WWF SmackDown 2. I would have killed for a Hell in a Cell match here, man. Or table matches. Ugh, what could have been. The biggest issue that No Mercy ever faced, though, was definitely the save wiping issue. Some of you know about this, but if you don't, I'll educate you. I'll give you the short version. Basically, the story is this. In the first production run of No Mercy cartridges, the first cartridges that came hot off the presses, a lot of them were just broken. And what I mean by that is you could have 100 hours of gameplay logged, you could have the entire SmackDown Mall unlocked. One day you would turn on your Nintendo 64 and it would all be gone. For no reason, there would be no warning, just all of your progress would be completely erased because of a problem with the manufacturing. It's nothing you did. Now, this issue did not persist. It was solved pretty quickly, and anybody who had the save wiping issue was allowed to send in their broken copy for a fixed one, but yeah, that sucks. Now, I personally never saw this happen. None of my friends who owned No Mercy ever experienced this, but just because we didn't experience it does not mean it's not real. It was definitely out there, and if you suffered the save wiping glitch, I offer you my condolences. That sucks. And now we've reached the point of this video where we reminisce. The point where we flash back to a bygone era, moments lost to time, never to be revisited. I've had a blast capturing this gameplay. I've had a good time writing this script and detailing what makes WWF No Mercy so special, but it's not the same. It's not the same as going over to your friend's house for a sleepover 23 years ago. Friday night, maybe Saturday night, any day where there wasn't school in the morning, right? A little bit of pizza going on, maybe a Mario Kart primer to get the night started. It was all there. WWF No Mercy was the main event of the evening. Maybe an over-the-top battle royal with everybody grabbing one of the 4 controllers. Throw the tag team titles on the line in a ladder match for the ages. Jumping up and down during big spots, audibly celebrating after a win so loud that the parents would pop their head in the room to make sure everything was all good. It was the best. But that's gone now, man. Today we get together online with our headsets. Maybe once in a while there's a hangout session with a Jackbox game or something, but we're not kids anymore, you know? When the Nintendo 64 was turned off and the lights were out, you'd tell jokes that you couldn't say around the adults. Maybe talk about the girls at school a little bit. Simpler times, right? A time before nitpicking about the hair on an in-game model. A time before deep, dark cynicism. A time before bills and jobs. WWF No Mercy is an excellent game. There's zero doubt about that. But I do genuinely believe that a good deal of its legacy, as the greatest of all time, has to do with nostalgia. And that's great. That's not a bad thing at all. But it is what it is. I don't know about you, but I cannot think about this game without flashing back to those times. There's a reason that every new wrestling game that comes out is compared to No Mercy. And there's a reason that the same people clamoring for the second coming will never be satisfied. It's not just weak and strong grapples they're after. It's not just that Aki feel, as it were. WWE No Mercy Reborn could release tomorrow. It could be a copy and paste job with better graphics, and it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same because nothing can take you back to those times. And that's what you're really after. Oh man, and with that out of the way, you know, the sappy introspective part, let's talk facts. The fact of the matter is that WWF No Mercy reviewed like $1 million. Critics ate it up. Fans ate it up. It certainly trounced WCW's video game offering that year. Good lord. And not only did it review like $1 million, it sold like 1 million units. Over 1 million, as a matter of fact. And maybe a sequel would have sold even more. Maybe the sequel would have sold more copies than either of Aki's WCW games, which, if you didn't know, both outsold No Mercy. I feel like that gets glossed over a lot. On the topic of sequels, let's quickly tackle WWF Backlash, the canceled sequel to No Mercy. It's not real. It was never real. I know, you saw a YouTube video talking about a magazine screenshot. It was gonna have Hell in a Cell matches. That's all internet garbage. It's not real. You got duped. Sanders Keel, longtime THQ producer and former cohort of mine on a little show called Wrestling Games Rewind over on ad-free shows, shout out to Stan. Sanders confirmed himself that WWF Backlash never existed. That's straight from the man himself. We all wish it existed, sure, but if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. And last I checked, we're still on solid ground. Although WWF Backlash never existed, although there never was a sequel in the works, that does not mean that this spirit did not live on. It lives on to this day, as a matter of fact, through the wild world of No Mercy modding over on the PC. Now, I've never been a PC gamer, but even I, in like 2007, did dabble in the world of No Mercy mods. I had to see it for myself. I didn't last long. Playing No Mercy on a keyboard was horrendous, and my 2002 home computer wasn't exactly a powerhouse, but that's not the point. The point is that No Mercy MVs were so popular back in the day. Some of these videos I'm showing you right now are nearly 15 years old. The technology has come so far. Mods are still being worked on to this day, and hell, some of you can play WWF No Mercy on your phones. We live in an insane world, man. But even the modding scene isn't the final note, as WWF No Mercy's director, the legendary Hideyuki Iwashita, is serving as a consultant on the upcoming all-elite wrestling video game, AEW Fight Forever. Many games over the years have claimed to be going after that Aki feel. Many have served up empty promises that they had recaptured the magic, only to not come remotely close. Can AEW's debut title, with Gaeta-san behind the scenes, finally be the true successor? Hey, you never know. I certainly don't believe it, not just yet, and I won't until the game is in my hands. But it's fun to wonder, right? I've covered Aki's move into the direction of the Def Jam series many times. I've also noted their evolution into Sin Sophia, a company creating games unrecognizable of their past works. Time moves forward and things change. 23 years ago, when we were looking forward to sleepovers and we were playing those brand new PS1 and N64 games, everything was simpler. But that doesn't mean today sucks. Today doesn't suck. Back then, even with an N64 controller in our hands and No Mercy in the console, there were days that we thought sucked. And in the long run, we know they didn't. So do yourself a favor, even if just for today. Don't let today suck. Take that bubbling cynicism, take that instinct to scoff, and lay the smackdown on it. You deserve a good day. So take that whispering negativity and show it
No mercy.
The WWF SmackDown series of video games made its big debut back in March of 2000, and for many years, across half a dozen sequels, the franchise called Sony's PlayStation consoles home. From the PlayStation to the PlayStation 2, from WWF to WWE, from The Rock's catchphrases serving as subtitles to an eventual switch into brand warfare territory, one thing never changed. For PlayStation gamers, SmackDown was our series. When the Nintendo kids had No Mercy, we had SmackDown. When the Gamecube and Xbox kids had WrestleMania and RAW, we had SmackDown. Again, SmackDown was our series. That is until WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2007 hit the scene. A game that would indeed see a PS2 release, but for the first time, a SmackDown title would cross over into Microsoft territory, launching on the brand new Xbox 360. This was the first SmackDown entry to leap into the next generation, and unfortunately for the PlayStation faithful, the 360 version would be the only next-gen release, as a PlayStation 3 iteration of the game never materialized. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, obviously, today we're going to be focusing on WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2007, but what may not have been clear is that I will be focusing specifically on the PlayStation 2 version of the game. That may not be what many of you want to hear, but let me tell you why I'm doing it this way. If you frequent this channel, you know very well that a big part of my videos is sharing my personal stories, recollecting the past, drawing from my very real experiences. The fact of the matter is that I'm a PlayStation guy. I didn't own an Xbox 360, so the obviously much better looking graphics of that version, the glistening sweat, the better lighting effects, the richer colors, the extremely detailed high-res textures, they weren't an option for me. It's the same story I told in my Fight Night Round 3 16 years later video. The next-gen version was the best thing going, it was the hottest item on the shelves, and it was not available to me. I was still rocking a PlayStation 2, and hey man, sometimes you have to make do, sometimes you gotta get in where you fit in. Now, I'm sorry if that's a disappointment for you, but I am not sorry to report that the PlayStation 2 version of SmackDown vs. RAW 2007, while not as sharp, while not as pretty as its Xbox 360 counterpart, is still pretty damn good. And without wasting any more time, let's get to it. Let's talk about the biggest difference between this entry, SVR07, and its most recent predecessor. Hell, it's a big difference between this game and all of its predecessors. The control scheme has been completely redesigned. We're no longer using a directional button and circle to get into a grapple, and then repeating a directional button and circle to enact a move. We're not using circle to grapple at all anymore. Hell, we're not even using the D-pad to move our wrestler. All player movements and maneuvers are now tied to the analog sticks. The left stick guides us around the ring, and the right stick is now the home base of the grapple system. Flicking the stick in any direction fires off a quick grapple, while holding R1 and flicking the stick locks your opponent up for a whole new set of maneuvers. Clicking the right stick in, we in the business call that the R3 button, no big deal, performs a brand new ultimate control move. Ultimate control moves allow us to walk around the ring holding an opponent in the air. We can lift them higher, we can slam them down, we can even transition into another ultimate control move. We can really do whatever we want, so Ultimate Control is a pretty apt title. I like to use these to toss dudes off the top of Hell in a Cell. I like to throw jabronis through the announce table.
And to build some momentum at the same time.
On top of Ultimate Control moves were the brand new Environmental Grapples. These allowed us to hit the 10 punches in the corner. We can smash our opponent's face off the steel ring steps. Head on over to the announce desk and choke the life out of your opposition with the power cable. Awesome. This new control layout was a huge change. It was a big deal, and I loved using these new features. This new system did come with a price though. It is my opinion that this is where the SmackDown games became largely inaccessible to newcomers. This is where you could no longer hand somebody who doesn't play video games all the time a controller and they could figure it out and have fun. It's not an exaggeration when I say that upon popping this disc into my PlayStation 2, I had to go through the tutorials again. I'm picking up my old save file from November of 2007 here. This is the real deal, and that's the last time I'd played this game up until now. Hand me a controller on the original SmackDown, and I'm right at home in less than a second. But here, man, it's so much deeper and more complicated, I needed to relearn it all. What I don't think needs to be explained to anybody is that there are very few things in this world that are cooler than smashing somebody through a table. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 finally fleshed out the table match in a way that my friends and I had been begging for years. In the original SmackDown game, we didn't have tables at all. There were tables in the beta version that were cut before final release, sadly. SmackDown 2 Know Your Role delivered the wood in a big way. Oh! Not only did we have usable, breakable tables scattered around the myriad backstage settings, but for the first time ever, we had the option of competing in table matches. Over the next 5 SmackDown games, tables would see nearly zero growth outside of being able to lean them up in the corner. I could do a whole video on the evolution of tables in wrestling games. I had been saying forever that it would be nice to have table finishers. Let the player throw their opponent up against a table and hit a specific table smashing finishing move. And let us stack the tables. Stacking tables on top of each other had been a high spot staple in WWE for over half a decade at this point. There's no reason why we can't recreate this in the video game. And don't leave a comment about breaking gravity and all logic in the prior games in order to pull off some insanity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an in-game feature that the devs put effort into. Thank you. Would you believe me if I told you that with SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, Yuke's granted both of these wishes? Table matches are totally reworked. We can't just hit a diving move and win in 30 seconds anymore. Now, we've got to wear an opponent's body part down to red before a victory is even possible. But once we've done that, go ahead. Lean that jerk up against the table and hit your brand new table finisher.
Plain and simple. Maybe he's just a little more eccentric than most, but his job is to entertain the fans.
Most wrestlers have a DDT, but Triple H can drive you through a table with a pedigree. John Cena will deliver a devastating FU that sends splinters flying. Lay your opposition across a table, climb up to the top rope, and hit a cinematic splash. So I wrote that part of the script before I got the footage. I tried to do the splash finisher and Kid Cash got out of the way. This game is how old now and I'm still seeing new things for the first time? I had to leave that in. And he also bulldogged me through the table, which is a finisher I've never seen before. I'm still seeing new things here, and that's awesome. Hell, you can head out of the ring and use your table special on the announce desk to recreate Shane McMahon's top rope elbow. a spot that had been all the rage for years and years by this point. But even that's not all. Remember how I mentioned stacking tables? That's right, Dan-Dans. I had been asking for this for so long, and for it to finally be delivered, hey man, I was a happy camper.
I know. It really is like being married to your career.
But Ukes didn't stop the upgrade train with tables, no sir. Ladders have finally seen a substantial facelift as well. Remember at WrestleMania 21, in the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, when Shelton Benjamin ran up a ladder that was leaned against another ladder? Ukes wasted no time implementing this jaw-dropping spot into the SmackDown series. And on that same note, the multi-man Money in the Bank ladder match has been added as well. I love that the game can identify what the situation is and launches an attack appropriate for the occasion. If there's someone on top of the ladder, you'll run up and clothesline them down. If there's no one there, you'll step higher and jump from the apex with a splash or an elbow drop, targeting an opponent underneath you. You may or may not have connected the dots on this already, but there are 2 ladders required for you to pull this off. And believe it or not, this was the first instance in franchise history that we were allowed to have more than 1 ladder at a time. Sounds crazy now, but yeah man, if you've been along for the ride since day 1 like I have, you remember how limited those early days were. In the same way that winning requirements in a table match were updated, so too are those of the ladder match. We went from the 2-second jump and snatch, to the jump, hang, pull, to this, an interactive minigame. It's on us to reach for the title suspended high above the ring. Rotating the analog sticks to find the sweet spot is the name of the game, but my favorite part is the high-risk, high-reward system of the reach itself. You can grab the belt with one hand in order to remain steady, but draining the meter to pick up the victory takes much longer. Reaching with both hands will drain the meter much faster, but if you're not lined up properly, overcommitting will cause you to fall from the top of the ladder, granting your opponent a chance to capitalize on your colossal failure. Money in the Bank matches are a chaotic good time, and they're also the only new match type here in SVR07, if you consider it a new match type, that is. We've had ladder matches for 6 years already. This is just a ladder match with more people. And not only are there really no new match types, we've actually lost several match types, as Bra and Panties and Fulfill Your Fantasy were both removed. But maybe that was for the best. So despite several existing match types seeing fantastic improvements, we don't really have any new match types to speak of. We've even actually lost a few over the years. So what else is new? What is here to make up for such a large area of the game not really expanding? Your satisfaction with the new aspects of SVR07 will depend on what type of player you are. We've got the franchise debuts of Bobby Lashley, Umaga, Paul Burchill, the Boogeyman, and more, so if jumping in with new characters is your favorite part of an annualized wrestling title, there you go. If you're big on imagination and customization, Create an Entrance is right up your alley. This mode is deep. It's super expansive. You can put some pretty crazy stuff together in here. Maybe hardcore action is more your speed.
Oh!
You'll be happy to hear that fighting in the crowd is once again on the menu. And no, I'm not talking about the 2D paper people from SmackDown Just Bring It. Ukes has evolved with the times. Crash over the barricade and step into a sectioned off area where there are plenty of weapons to wreak havoc with. Towers of speakers which should apparently have a high voltage warning in front of it. And don't forget about climbing the scaffolding and diving from the top. This was practically the main selling point of the game's reveal trailer. A trailer that was entirely pre-rendered, by the way. Don't you hate this? If I never see a CG trailer again for the rest of my life, I'd be happy. You're trying to sell me a video game. Show me the video game. Now I realize everything is a case-by-case basis, but with SmackDown, you have the game up and running. It's an annualized release, not a brand new thing being built from the ground up. So show me the game, not this. Sorry, this isn't the place to cut a promo on CG trailers. I'll shut up about it. General Manager mode also returns from SVR06, but now the curtain is pulled back much further. Rather than simply putting us in the role of booker and tossing matches together, we are actually charged with hiring writers to craft storylines. Each writer has their own specialty, and you'll want to hire writers that can craft stories that work for your talent. If you've got the Great Khali and Kane on your show, it's definitely worth hiring someone who specializes in a Battle of the Giants story, you know? This whole thing feels a little strange, though. I feel like WWE didn't really let fans inside like that, into the nuts and bolts, as it were. Hiring writers is about as inside baseball as it gets. I do appreciate the ability to send wrestlers down to Sunday Night Heat or Velocity in the event that they need a boost. Let's say you've got an idea for Carlito, but his standings are not looking so hot. Send him down. Get some seasoning, get some momentum, and call him up when he's ready. Newer fans will have no concept of this, but back in the day, WWE played with a ranking system called Power 25 for a short time. There was no real science to it. They'd shape it however they wanted in order to fit what they were doing at any given time, but it's cool to see it here in the game. It's another reminder of the time period SVR 07 comes from. The same can be said about the soundtrack as well.
I got money in the bank. Yeah. Shout out what you drank.
Give up on your life for you's been blessed and kind.
You're staring at the angel with death. Lying, lying, pants on fire. You burning up like David Correct.
So what if you can see the darkest side of me? Feel your taste so sweet. I want to be a friend of letting go.
Now, I've been talking about the season modes in the SmackDown games for about 6 years now, dating all the way back to the history of SmackDown. You know what season mode is. It's the ongoing, storyline-based, kind of story mode that accompanies some of the greatest wrestling games of all time. Season mode never really gets old. Most of them are infinitely replayable, and while it doesn't really get old, it definitely gets weird. Let me just quickly say, you'll notice that these clips are from the Xbox 360 version of the game, and that's because Main Event Games has given me the okay to borrow some of his footage for this retrospective, which I greatly appreciate. There's a link to his channel in the description, so go subscribe to Main Event Games and leave a comment on one of his videos telling him I sent you, or lose my number. Now let's get down to business. Why did I say that SVR 07 season mode gets weird? Well, why don't I just show you?
What? You gotta be kidding. I don't do bikini contests. What the?
I know. How about a singles match? I'll see you out there, girlfriend.
She then turns the wand on her partner in crime, Edge.
Better. In fact, let's find out.
چیکار کردی به من؟ چیکار کردی؟ این که صدای من نیسته؟ این انگلیسی نیست؟ چیکار داره به جهنم؟ چیکار داره میشه اینجا؟
Whoa!
We've got a rematch tonight. And like I said, you're going to see what it's like to be in the ring with the perfect 10.
Elsewhere, Undertaker predicts the future.
If you insist on making this mistake, then your grieving family will have no one to blame but you when the inevitable occurs.
No, it's the Mac military.
RVD gets more promo time in the game than he ever did on television.
When you're partners with someone, you expect they're gonna have your back when you're in trouble, you know? Last week, when I got my ass kicked by those two hicks, where were you, dude? You let a redneck with a chair stop you from helping me? Dude, that is really weak. I'll tell you what, though. If you want to keep teaming up with Mr. Monday Night, you better show me that you're a lot tougher than you look.
So on and so forth. I really don't want to talk about all of the different storylines one by one in great detail because I'll play through them on 616 Nitro somewhere down the line. That'll be fun, right? If you're new around here, there are a ton of full playthroughs on this channel, over 200 episodes worth of weekly wrestling game content in a Let's Play format, rather than this scripted retrospective style. Dig into the 616 Nitro playlist and enjoy it! But real quick, let me show you my season mode locker room, which could not possibly be more inspired by Bam Margera. The purple walls, the ornate stair rails, the suit of armor. It's hilarious to look at this again. I don't think Bam was obsessed with Mickie James though. And let me tell you something, I was 15 going on 16 when this game released. And Mickie James? Oh my goodness. Remember those shirts, I'm a Paul Heyman guy? I'd have worn a shirt that said, I'd sleep on the freeway as long as Mickie James would drive the car that runs me over. I'd have worn a shirt that said, I'll bury myself alive as long as Mickie James one day walks across the grass that grows over my skeleton. Man, teenagers are absolutely ravenous. Now, real quick, we do have to shine a light on the negative aspects of SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. There are not many to choose from, but this is a retrospective. We have to be fair. And I'm going to repeat that, this is a retrospective. I am not showing you a commercial for SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. I'm not trying to sell you SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. We are looking back on the time that was, with the good, the bad, and everywhere in between. It's okay to recognize the flaws in a piece of art, especially a piece of art that we love. Every once in a while I'll get a comment saying I'm too negative just for daring to point out the shortcomings in a certain game. Even if I've spent 30 minutes up to that point gushing about the game, God forbid I tell you something that's not great. Save your breath. If you want to ignore all the positives up to this point, that's on you, not me. Alright? So, we don't have much to choose from, we don't have much to look at, but let's do our best. Now, like I said, it's not as if there's a long list of complaints to dive into here. Being able to hit a ladder finisher without even being on the ladder does kind of screw up that match type. It's very easily exploitable. There's also some pretty massive slowdown during certain multi-man matches, which is kind of strange. What is this, the Nintendo 64?
This capacity, look out, he's setting up his opponent. There it is, the RKO! Man, it's as fast as it is deadly. Randy Orton's one of the most dangerous superstars in the WWE, JR. Ric Flair and Triple H taught him everything he knows.
Several post-match cutscenes are extremely out of focus. How this slipped through the cracks, I have no idea. It's really distracting. And speaking of blur, take a look at the belts in the locker room. The main plates are alright, but the side plates are as flat as a pancake and are so fuzzed out that they almost look censored. What happened here? This isn't really a negative, more of just an interesting note. But I find it funny that the best wrestler in the game is Kurt Angle. If you don't recall, this game released in November of 2006, and by that time, Kurt Angle was the face of TNA. How do you like that? It takes a long time to make a video game. WWE titles are notorious for having roster cutoffs, where if you weren't on TV by that date, you're probably not going to make it into the game. That's understandable, but where are Paul London and Brian Kendrick? London was in the last game, so why was he cut? Tatanka's comeback run was in full swing here. Where is he? Playing as Old Man Tatanka would have been awesome. Umaga is here, but his mouthpiece and manager, Armando Alejandro Estrada, is not. Why? That's a huge bummer because Estrada was a focal point in storylines and was on every episode of weekly TV at this point. And one more roster annoyance. We've got 2/3 of the Mexicools here in Psychosis and Super Crazy, but Juventud Guerrera is nowhere to be found. I recognize he was released in early 2006, but Super Crazy and Psychosis were off WWE TV for months by the time this game came out too. Give me all 3 Mexicools, damn it. This is like when Hogan and Nash were in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth and Scott Hall wasn't. It was incomplete. But with that, I'm all out of complaints. Like I said, there isn't much to pick from. So let's flip it in the other direction and focus on some extra cool tidbits. I loved Taz back in the day. I still love his commentary work, and having him here in SVR 07 as a legend is great. The best part, though, is that he's got his old theme song.
Survive by lectures.
How about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes? Unbelievably, this is only Dusty's second playable video game appearance, the first being ECW Anarchy Rules, as odd as that sounds. Yes, I'm aware Dusty was in WCW NWO Revenge, but he was not playable. He was a manager. I chose my words very carefully. Delete your comment. Coming back to SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, after all this time, I mean more than 15 years later, it's a lot to take in. It's not just a snapshot of what WWE was in this moment in time. If you're anything like me, you also flash back to what your life was like in that moment in time. I mentioned earlier that the footage I've been showing you is from my original save file from my old memory card. I still have it. I look at that date and, I mean, you might be expecting me to rattle off crystal clear memories of what my life was like back then. I do it all the time. But this one's different. It's murky. It's unfortunately a total blur of sadness, pain, and negativity. In 2007, my parents were deep into their divorce. My parents always fought when I was a child, all the time, but it wasn't until I was a teenager that my family was officially stamped with the broken home label. I was unhappy at this time in my life, obviously. I remember sitting on the computer in the basement and my mom walked up behind me saying, "I'm divorcing your father, by the way." I didn't know what to do. I was 15, I had no idea how to handle information like this, so I wound up making some really poor decisions and hurting myself pretty badly. I started skipping school. When I would show up to school, I would skip my classes, roaming the halls or just going to every single lunch period to sit with all my friends who were spread across the hours. I didn't do any of my work because I recognized that no matter how many phone calls came home about my refusal to cooperate, my parents were too busy going to war with each other to truly deal with me. This is super personal stuff, I recognize that, but that's real life, man. These are the first memories that come to mind when I look at that date on the save file. And what's the silver lining here? What kept me sane during these turbulent times? You're looking at it. Art can be many things. Art can be inspiration, art can be your purpose. For me, art was an escape. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 and video games as a whole, they're works of art. You know when I wasn't thinking about my family splintering into a million pieces? When I was the general manager of SmackDown. You know when I wasn't worried about getting screamed at for skipping school? When I was suplexing opponents through stacked tables. Having captured this gameplay, I revisited this save file, and overwriting this save means that original date no longer stands. And part of me feels like that marker, that timestamp no longer existing is sad. But another part of me feels like maybe I was finally able to make peace with that awful time and let it go. Maybe this video, maybe telling this story, is the only real way to bring it all full circle. I don't know. What I do know is this. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 reviewed very well, as expected. The Xbox 360 version wowed fans and critics alike, setting the scene for what this new generation of wrestling video games could look and feel like. As I stated at the top, this was the first time the SmackDown franchise left the PlayStation, venturing into the realm of the Xbox 360. I was happy for Xbox gamers, man. Everybody deserves a great video game, regardless of which console you prefer. And now, they had one. I'm a PlayStation guy through and through, and as a PlayStation guy, I thought it was awesome to see our wrestling games being enjoyed by even more people. Shout out to SVR07, man. The first SmackDown to leave the PlayStation, and my main lifeline to staying above water in one of the worst times of my life. In the long and storied history of video games based on professional wrestling, we've got a little bit of everything spread across the all-time tier list. Titles like 2003's WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain on the PlayStation 2, or 2000's WWF No Mercy on the Nintendo 64 can be slotted anywhere around the very top. I mean, that's where you'd put them if you had a brain in your head. Games like TNA Impact or Saturday Night Slam Masters are a little more niche, but are nowhere near the bottom of the barrel. That's a zone that plays host to offerings like Simpsons Wrestling and... Jesus, Simpsons Wrestling might be the worst of the worst. I've done retrospectives on literally every game I just mentioned. The links are in the description, but we are not here today to retread old ground. Today, for the first time ever, Triangle X Squared Circle crosses the line into Microsoft territory, with the very first wrestling game ever released on the Xbox, WWF RAW. Does this 2002 title find itself near the top with the No Mercies of the world? Does it land somewhere in the middle? Or will it fall flat on its face on the way to the ring with Simpsons Wrestling? There's only one way to find out. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, as I stated at the end of the last episode, I would love to cover the entire Xbox Trilogy, as I call it, that being WWF RAW, WWE RAW 2, and WWE WrestleMania 21. Now, that'll be a ton of work, and I have to buy all of these games, as I don't own any of them. So, if you're not already signed up over on patreon.com/616entertainment, please consider doing so. You can help keep 616 Entertainment alive. You can help 616 Entertainment grow, if you so desire. Now, I don't take any sponsors or anything like that. What you just heard is going to be my one and only commercial for my content. So, thank you for hearing me out, and I feel like now is a pretty good time to jump into the topic at hand here today. Let's get to it. I'll keep this part short for the sake of the audience that watches every episode. I've been a PlayStation guy since the PS1 days. I've never owned an Xbox console in my life. As a matter of fact, the Xbox that I've used to capture all of this gameplay was lent to me by longtime Dan Kiko Olvera, which I greatly appreciate. Thanks, Kiko. I'm not anti-Xbox by any means. I'm not a console wars guy. In fact, I find the whole console wars thing to be childish and unbearably annoying. Play whatever you want. It just so happens that Xbox doesn't have anything that I really want to play. So don't get it twisted. I'm not burying Halo or Gears of War or anything. That's just not my scene. Now, 2002 is the year at hand here today. A great year for wrestling, a great year for video games, and maybe it was a great year for wrestling games. Let's take a look at the particulars. Over on the Gamecube, there was WWE WrestleMania X8, a game with one of the best iterations of Hell in a Cell to this day. PlayStation 2 owners were all over WWE SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, a title that many would put at the top of the tier list. There was Fire Pro Wrestling 2 and Road to WrestleMania X8 on the Game Boy Advance, Legends of Wrestling 2 on almost everything. I'll stop there. There was a little something for everybody, and that's before we set our eyes on WWF RAW for the Xbox. I always say everybody deserves a great game in their favorite genre, regardless of which console you happen to own. I love that MLB The Show is no longer PlayStation exclusive. Switch owners, Xbox owners, PC owners, there's no consumer-friendly reason that they shouldn't have a great baseball game to play. And now, they do. Gamers who jumped on board with Xbox in 2001, hey, maybe they got an Xbox in place of a PlayStation 2. Maybe they bought an Xbox rather than buying a Gamecube. Listen, I know in my house, we were a one-console household. We didn't have the money for multiple consoles. So Xbox players who were wrestling fans were looking for either an equivalent to or the killer of the SmackDown titles. They were looking for a game that would stand up to WrestleMania X8. Was WWF RAW that game? Let's first focus on some of the standout positives of WWF RAW. Look at these camera angles, man. There's camera work at play here that hasn't been seen in any wrestling game before or after Raw's release. It's very clear that a true-to-television look and feel is what the team were going for. And just from these entrances, I don't think anyone can say that they didn't nail it. When I say the team, or they in this regard, I'm talking about the game's developer, Anchor Inc. Quick pit stop from gameplay features for a second, just to add some background. Anchor Inc. did not last long in the game development space, but if you've played the original UFC title on the Sega Dreamcast, Pride FC on the PlayStation 2, or maybe even Toy Fighter in arcades, you've got some experience with their work. Now back to Raw. On top of the camera work, the overall look of the arena at large is still extremely impressive. Some may call this game blurry looking or hazy, but dude, that's what it looked like in a WWF arena 20 years ago. There was so much pyro back then that this murky, almost casino-like look of the smoke hanging in the air, that's accurate. This is also the only game I've ever seen where the area off the stage and to the sides of the ramp looks functional, as if people actually work here. It's not just a tall wall coming up off the cement floor. There are staircases on either side of the stage, and yes, you can walk up them. The equipment trunks that we saw in backstage segments every week on television are here in the game, and guess what? We can break them open like treasure chests, as each trunk contains a weapon. Have you ever seen a spiked dog collar as a weapon? Well, you have now. Steel chairs come in red, gold, blue, the announce desk is breakable, and on the topic of furniture, how about the two types of tables, black and brown? Now, is there a difference? Yeah, one's black, one's brown, duh. More on tables later. Several WWE games have included Undertaker's motorcycle entrance, but how many of them also had Taker leaving on the bike after a victory? How many games included Raven's shopping cart full of weapons as a part of his entrance? How many times have you seen Big Show duck in order to fit his tall-ass head under the Titantron? These are tiny, tiny details, but they make a difference. Now, if you're watching this video and you're wondering why I'm spending so much time on these tiny details, it's because that's kind of all WWF RAW has going for it. Look, this gameplay is not going to set the world on fire. These match types and gimmicks are... I mean, let's just take a look. It is no exaggeration when I say this. It feels like each wrestler has about 4 moves in their arsenal. Now, that's not entirely factual. There are more than 4 because the moves change depending on whether you grappled a ready or groggy opponent, but still, it's shallow. Very shallow. The overall physics just feel off. It's like we're wrestling on the moon. I put over the television-style presentation of the entrances, and to be fair, we do have picture-in-picture replays during matches, which is another first-time ever feature, but the cameras during the matches are ridiculous. Why are we so tight on the action? Sometimes you can't even tell we're in a wrestling ring. Between the ropes being cut out of the shot and the gray canvas under our feet, we may as well be fighting on a slab of cement. Viewers with keen eyes may notice that every clip I've shown you so far has taken place in the Monday Night Raw arena. Now, if you know me and you watch my videos, you've recognized that I explore every arena there is to give the video as much visual variety as possible. Well, I'm doing the same thing here. I'm giving you all the variety there is. The Raw arena is the only arena in the game. No SmackDown, no pay-per-views, not even Sunday Night Heat, which is just the Raw arena with orange logos. Zero, I mean zero effort went into lending any sort of variety to the settings, which is incredible. I used the word shallow when it came to the grappling mechanics, but man, arena-wise, this game's a puddle of piss. I guess I have to acknowledge that if you play a King of the Ring tournament, they did throw logos on the Tron and the ropes are black, but God almighty, is that the best they could do? Especially since King of the Ring in this era had such a cool stage! Alright, let's change gears. When it comes to match types, it's 2002, you know? Obviously we've got one-on-one, hardcore, tag team, triple threat, fatal four-way, the staples. How about table matches? Nope. We've got tables in the game, but no table match. Weird. Ladder match? Nope. We've got ladders in the game, but no ladder match. Weird. Steel cage? Nope. Hell in a Cell? Nope. Iron Man? Nope. Casket? Nope. Special referee? Nope. Royal Rumble? Nope. I Quit? Yep. I don't mean I Quit as in there's an I Quit match in this game, because there's not. I mean, of course there's not. I mean, I quit listing off these match types because there are 0 gimmick matches in WWF RAW. 0. That is unbelievable to me. We had steel cage matches in 1992 on the NES, for God's sake. But let's not dwell on it. Let's take a look at the season mode. I'll show that to you now. There is no fucking season mode. Jesus Christ, what is there to do in this game? No gimmick matches, no season mode. Look, my co-host over on GM Showdown, No Taxes Nigel Bravo. Nigel and I, every once in a while, would complain to each other that Fire Pro Wrestling World doesn't have enough gimmick matches. I mean, there's Steel Cage, Barbed Wire Deathmatch, Landmine Massacre, you got Royal Rumbles, you got MMA rules, you got kickboxing rules, there's a couple. We would complain that that wasn't enough. We wish there were more gimmick matches, more variety in the game. Good God, comparing Fire Pro Wrestling World to WWF RAW, Fire Pro is more than you could ever ask for. Let's look at some of the weirder aspects of WWF RAW. Why are the controls on the character select screen inverted? Pressing down on the D-pad moves the selection tool up. Why? Am I picking a wrestler or entering the code on a combination lock? We may not have any gimmick matches, but at least there's title match on the main menu. Want to simply win or defend a championship in exhibition? Well, that's not what this is. This isn't a title match at all. It's a gauntlet, an arcade ladder of sorts, which ends in a title match. Why is Intercontinental split into 2 words? I've never seen that before. Finishing title match unlocks that belt for Create a Wrestler mode, and you can wear the belts to the ring or use them as weapons, but is that what anybody wants? No. But at least finishing a title match gauntlet gives us this. Man, I'm so proud to be the champ title holder. Graphically, the game is nice. Jeff Hardy looks fantastic, as do The Rock and Stone Cold, amongst others. But what the fuck happened to Triple H? Who is this? That's not Triple H. That's not even Double H. At best, we are looking at Single H here. Oh my god. Let me get back to the tables. I said I would earlier. Let me talk about them now. I love tables. Here, enjoy a few table bumps. WWF RAW gives us tables to work with, which is great, but unfortunately they kinda suck. In every other wrestling game with tables, you Irish whip an opponent onto a table. They lay across it, you jump from the top rope and smash them through. In WWF RAW, you whip an opponent at a table and it breaks. It's a total crapshoot whether it's actually gonna break or not. I do like that the pieces of the table don't disappear though, and we can use the broken pieces as individual weapons. Alright, RAW gets points for that. And if you find a hat inside a weapon box, you can put it on your head. That's extra points too. And alright, we can attack opponents while they're in the middle of their entrance, which is another little something that had never been done before. 3 bonus points. Do you see what I mean with little details being the highlights of WWF RAW? The gameplay is lame, the pitiful lack of variety when it comes to match types and arenas is unbelievable. It's all about the details, man. But there is one area, there's one major positive where WWF RAW excels in a way that no wrestling game had prior. Create a Wrestler had existed for years at this point, and RAW's isn't too bad. Certainly not the worst I've ever seen. In the templates I found a guy that kinda looks like Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, and this guy looks like Dante from Devil May Cry for some reason. I noticed in the manual that whoever was writing this thing was not impressed with our creation. What is your jobber's full name? Jobber? Seriously? What a dick. Anyway, CAW is not what I'm talking about in regards to being awesome. I'm talking about create an entrance. Dandans, the amount of control at our fingertips here is insane. Adjusting the individual color of every column of light inside the ramp allowed me to create a pulsing rainbow road looking walkway. Want to add fog? Do it. Adjust the color. Need pyro? What kind of pyro? No one had ever seen this level of customization when it came to entrances, and I'm still impressed by this today. Hey, this is a major last-second addition, as you can tell from the audio quality, but I want to put over WWF RAW real quick for, highlighting a number of guys that were never featured in WWE games prior. As you're seeing on screen, here's K-Quick. This was the first and maybe only appearance of Haku that I can remember. And hey, Just Incredible didn't pop up too many times. The roster, while not the best, still some bright spots. Had to shine a light on it. I owned WWF RAW on PC. It was one of the very, very few PC games that I ever owned. And I only had it because I found it at Kmart for like $7, by the way. So I brought WWF RAW home. I tried to play it on my old shitty PC with my old shitty keyboard, and it was unplayable. I tried, man. I really tried to have fun with it, as you do at that age, and it just couldn't be done. The game is barely responsive on a controller. It almost feels like it's unfinished. Now imagine trying to play it on a keyboard. Terrible. You know what's interesting is WWF RAW was the last WWF or WWE game to get a PC release all the way until WWE 2K15. Wow, that's a huge gap. And I also find it interesting that this was the last game released under the WWF banner. What a way to go out. And at the same time, what a way to come in, right? This was the first wrestling game ever released on the Xbox, and it's not very good at all. WWF RAW isn't the worst wrestling game I've ever played, but it's really not even worth playing at all. And you would think that with The Rock being the person who revealed the Xbox, that developer Anchor Inc. or at least publisher THQ would have taken the time to make sure that this game was awesome. This is like if Michael Myers revealed a brand new line of cameras, and the first movie they made with those cameras was Halloween 5. Alright, it's not that bad. Nothing deserves to be put in the same category as Halloween 5. In my research for this retrospective, I learned that WWF RAW's Chief Development Officer, Masahiro Onoguchi, explained to IGN why there were so few match types and gimmicks in the game. And by that I mean practically zero. He stated that WWF RAW was supposed to be a launch title for the Xbox, but, and I quote, "The game was supposed to be a launch title, but we didn't have all of the information about the Xbox's capabilities. So we weren't able to use all of the features of the hardware for this game like we wanted to. But we'll definitely be ready for the next version of the game." Or, to put it more bluntly, they wanted to make a launch game, but they were not considered important enough to get dev kits early enough to get to work, nor did they have any idea what to do with those tools once they had them in hand. Onoguchi went further. Rather than putting lots and lots of mediocre modes in the game, we wanted fewer well-done game modes. This excuse holds no water because the few modes they did include are mediocre. Mediocre at best. WWF RAW on the Xbox doesn't lay the SmackDown. It's not worthy of a WrestleMania main event, and at the end of the day, Xbox owners deserved better. 1 year later, in September of 2003, Anchor Inc. would try again with WWE RAW 2. Was this the game Xbox owners had been hoping for? Well, there's only one way to find out. Next time. On the last episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, we dove deep into WWF RAW, the first wrestling game ever released on the Xbox. With a brand new next-generation console came a brand new set of promises. At the end of the day, many of those promises were broken. The game initially advertised blood, a story mode, and more features that were just not there upon Raw's release. The gameplay was limited and clunky. There were 0 gimmick matches to choose from and literally 1 arena to wrestle in. For a first outing on a shiny, new, highly powerful machine, it's fair to say that WWF RAW missed the mark by a wide margin. The game's chief development officer, Masahiro Onoguchi, hit the press quickly, making excuses for why the game fell so short of expectations, promising that the sequel would deliver the goods. What does that do for those who paid $50 for RAW? Absolutely nothing. But another $50 1 year later for WWE RAW 2? That's the move. This is the game Xbox players always wanted, right? I mean, that's what was promised. Tell me where you heard that one before. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, before we dive deep into WWE RAW 2, I want to update you guys on the Patreon support project. On 6/16/2023, I laid out the roadmap for the future of this channel, and I said that the only thing I need to deliver the most highly requested retrospectives in the history of 616 Entertainment was your support. Well, guess what? At the time that I'm recording this on-camera segment, we are just 4 new Patreon supporters away from unlocking an in-depth retrospective on Grand Theft Auto 3 and completing Phase 1 of the Patreon support project as a whole. That would then open up Phase 2 of the Patreon support project, where the retrospectives only get bigger and better. Now, like I said on 6/16/2023, these goals are not spaced far apart. Every 10 new signups unlocks a new video, and I cannot thank you enough for the support that has already come through. If you guys want to see these videos, sign up at any level you choose. These are projects that are not going to be produced without your support, and thus far, you've been absolutely blowing me away. So I can't wait to get to work on these retrospectives and GM Showdown Season 2. Man, Nigel and I are going to have to start having some talent meetings with our rosters, huh? But enough of that. We are here today to talk about WWE RAW 2, so let's get to it. With this episode, we can really get right into the action. I talked all about the game's developer, Anchor Inc., on the last episode. I stacked up the Gamecube and PlayStation 2 offerings against their Xbox counterpart, and not much has changed in that department. I mean, now we've crossed over into WrestleMania 19 and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain territory, so if anything, the pressure has gotten even more intense for RAW 2. Let's pause on this title for a second. For years, I've seen people online calling this game WWE RAW 2 Ruthless Aggression. I still see people using this title sometimes. Why? Where did this come from? Go back to the earliest trailer, look at the box art, look at the main menu. Where is the subtitle coming from? RAW 2 Ruthless Aggression? I don't think so. That's a great place to start though, that initial trailer. I remember downloading this trailer with my horrible dial-up connection. It probably took 45 minutes. And I was absolutely taken by what I was seeing. I didn't even own an Xbox. There's no way I could play this game, but I didn't care. 3D through a table? I'm in. Jeff Hardy doing an extremely realistic swanton bomb off the top of a ladder, seeing the ladder actually tip a little bit after he jumped, I was blown away. I was a PS2 kid. I was eating well with Shut Your Mouth and Here Comes the Pain. But as a wrestling fan and avid gamer, there was never enough. Seeing Hogan, Hall, and Nash in their NWO gear, getting a look at the SmackDown arena for the first time here on the Xbox, it looked like Anchor Inc. really stuck to their word regarding the variety missing from the first game. Later trailers showed off Hell in a Cell. They showed ladder matches. Is that an updated, arm-painted Jeff Hardy model I see? Holy hell, I remember thinking this looks good. If you had an Xbox in 2003, you were pumped. There's no way around it. But hype doesn't always pay off. Now before we dive deep into the gameplay and features, let's get this out of the way at the top. Everything that I was excited about from that initial reveal trailer is not in the game. The NWO of Hogan, Hall, and Nash, you can't pair them up. Scott Hall was removed from the game before release. That amazing Jeff Hardy model with the arm paint and the face paint, not in the game. Jeff Hardy was cut from WWE RAW 2. The black and blue SmackDown arena, cut from the game. The swanton from the very top of the ladder, and then the ladder tips when you jump from the edge, not possible in the game. The 3D through the table, I've never seen it pulled off. It's almost like Anchor Inc. made a ton of promises pre-release, and those promises seem to be broken. Are we in for a repeat offender here? The short answer is yes and no. To get into detail requires the long answer. Luckily, this is an in-depth retrospective, and the longer answers are kind of what I specialize in. First, as usual, I'd like to start off with some positives. One of the worst offenses of the original Raw was the dearth of special match types. Raw 2 delivers the goods, and it delivers them well. Hell in a Cell? Yes. Ladder match? Yes. Table match? Yes. Cage match? Yes. Royal Rumble? Yes. Buried Alive? Nope. Hey, but that's alright. This is major progress either way. Let's go in depth. Hell in a Cell used to be the coolest match out there, man. It still was at the time Raw 2 came out, and Raw 2 does the Cell justice. The structure is gigantic, first of all, which is insane. Can we break through the roof and crash into the ring? Absolutely. I love that the broken panel hangs down into the ring as well. You don't see this very often for some reason. Can we toss jabronis off the side of the cell and through the announce table? Yes, sir. Now, did I know the referee was going to end the match off that bump? No, I didn't. I don't know why he did that. That's very annoying. But hey, what a bump, right? Turning our attention to the Cell's little brother, the Steel Cage, this match, it sucks. There it is, Dan-Dans, the wheels fell off already. Here's a full cage match. That's it. How about a ladder match? This game sucks, guys. It does. This game kinda sucks. Is it better than the original Raw? Yes. But that's not saying much. You know, there were those of you in the comments of the last episode on WWF RAW that said, you know, this game isn't great, but Raw 2 is amazing. Raw 2 holds up just as well as SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. This game is nowhere near the same conversation as SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Raw 2 is nowhere near the conversation of WrestleMania 19. Now, some of you may be very upset that that's my opinion on Raw 2, and that's okay. I have footage to back up literally everything I'm saying. I'm not making any of this up. What you're looking at now is gameplay footage of SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I'm playing as Matt Hardy. The game is tight, it's snappy. The AI is smart, it's aggressive but cunning. They catch me sleeping every once in a while. Now let's look at some untouched gameplay from Raw 2. Now that was a simulation. That was two AI going to war against each other. Maybe that's a recipe for disaster, even though there's really no excuse for that. Let's chalk that up as a loss and look at me going one-on-one with the AI. Ric Flair won't come near me. I don't know what it is, but he will literally stand still until I walk directly into his line of sight. Only then will he sprint forward. This happened multiple times in this match alone. And speaking of sprinting, nearly every match you play will begin with the AI running directly at you with no plan whatsoever. The ladder match I played against Devon Dudley, he took one step on the ladder and then simply stopped moving. I tried to convince him to go higher. I tried to remind him we were having a match, but he wasn't interested. I eventually won this match because the AI couldn't figure out how to stop me and just walked into the ladder in an endless loop while his head attempted to separate itself from his shoulders. This game sucks. I don't want it to suck, and there are some really cool pieces to this puzzle, and I will shine a light on those pieces, but you gotta deal with the elephant in the room before you get there. You know, we're already in the negative portion of this video, so let's just knock these out. It was a major bummer that the original game didn't have a season mode. Well, here in the sequel, we've got a season mode, and it's terrible. I mean, who could forget memorable storylines like... There are no storylines. None. Nothing happens. We get to see the champion show up to the arena in a limo. That's pretty cool the first time. But this happens on literally every episode of every show. It gets old very, very quickly. It also drives me nuts that all the belts have an extra plate on them, but that's a major nitpick, so you can throw that out if you want. This season mode is advertised as 1 year long. That's 12 months of the WWE calendar, but it's not, really. In real life, there are 4 Raws and 4 SmackDowns, then a pay-per-view. Now, most games shorten this to 2 Raws and 2 SmackDowns before a pay-per-view. This game has 1 episode of Raw, 1 episode of SmackDown, and then a pay-per-view. A month's worth of season mode is 3 matches long. So there are no storylines in season mode. Got it. What is there? Well, we can steal from another wrestler's bags? We can set Viva La Bam traps that may or may not work. There are things like this. Alright, match announcement for what? What match was announced? GM request card. What the hell is a GM request card? This season mode is terrible, guys. Clearly, there are no voiceovers in season mode, and there's also no commentary during matches. None. At all. There are ring announcers, though. We've got Howard Finkel.
Weighing 275 pounds, The Rock!
And some woman. Who is this?
And introducing the opponent from Yonkers, New York, weighing in at 334 pounds, Tommy Dreamer.
This isn't Lillian Garcia, that's for damn sure.
Weighing in at 243 pounds, John Cena.
Did she say John Cena?
John Cena.
Who is John Cena?
You have a big mouth, John Cena.
Listen to the referees.
1, 2, 3, pinfall. 1, 2, 3, pinfall.
This has gotta be some sort of joke, right? But that's not even the craziest one. Check out the Royal Rumble.
Eliminated.
What is happening? What is going on here? Does this game take place in the same reality as the one that we live in, or is this some strange multiverse sort of situation? Let's switch gears. I started out putting over the Hell in a Cell match, and things went off the rails pretty quickly, but the Hell in a Cell match is cool. Let's look at some cool features. Let's look at some wacky weirdness. We'll get away from the negative for a few minutes. Many comments came through on the WWF RAW episode asking why I did not dive into the custom soundtracks feature of that game. And that's easy to answer. The short version is there are no custom soundtracks in WWF RAW. That feature debuted right here in RAW 2. The first experience I had with this game came at a friend's house back in the fall of 2003. Scott Spice was his name. He and his brother Ray had an Xbox. They had a copy of RAW 2. A bunch of us threw these ragtag, quick, created wrestlers together, and we had a ladder match. Let's talk about create a wrestler first, ladder match story after. RAW 2's CAW mode allows us to edit pre-existing members of the roster, which is big time. Who doesn't love changing colors and creating wild hybrid outfits? Working from the ground up is fun as well. Create an entrance is even better and deeper than it was in the original. And yeah man, custom entrance songs were a game changer. Pop your favorite CD into your Xbox, rip the track you want, and set it for your character's walk.
From the thrilling state of Illinois, the Big Butt Beater.
Come on, dude. So after we all created our custom hooligans, we threw them into a gigantic ladder match. Now there are two details I want to share here. The first being that this is the only wrestling game ever made to include the 20-foot ladder, the big one, you know? Check it out. The standard ladder looks like a step stool next to the big boy. Side note, it took me hours to find the 20-foot ladder. You don't start with these. They're randomly generated by grabbing weapons from under the ring. It took so long to find this thing that I started to wonder if my memories of seeing it were a dream or some sort of false memory. But no, I found it. Thank you, Lita. The second part of this story comes into play with the finish. I climbed a ladder and jumped up onto the line holding the belt above the ring. My buddy Scott climbed the ladder. He jumped, and then he was hanging. And that was it. We couldn't figure out what to do. We tapped buttons, nothing. We pressed each button individually, nothing. Eventually, we put the controllers down, we all went outside, we grabbed our bikes, and we rode all around the neighborhood. 2 hours go by. We're out being hoodlums. Eventually, we come back to Scott's house. We went into the room where our characters were still hanging from the belt. This is a true story. I'm not kidding. Also, I got in trouble that night for calling home to let my parents know that I was on my way back. It was dark out. I figured that they would like to know that I was on my way. So I pick up Scott's phone, back when the phone was on the wall and had a cord attached to it. And I called home and I said, hey, I'll be there soon. And I got screamed at. My parents didn't know where I was all night. Now, that's not my fault. I did what I always did. Everyone was out in the street in front of my house. I shouted, hey, going to Scott's, I'll be back later. They didn't hear me. So we go to Scott's house, I call home, say, hey, I'll be there soon, and I get in trouble? I get grounded? It was garbage then, it's garbage now, and I'm still not happy about it. Anyway, why does Rey Mysterio look so bad in this game? What is this? Look at him in the pre-release trailer. What happened? You know what's cool? We can choose a referee. And they're the real WWE referees of the time. Earl Hebner, Tim White, Mike Chioda, Nick Patrick, so on and so forth. This didn't last long.
Like, you're tied down at WWE. You couldn't get royalties off of video games because they wouldn't let us in the video games. Yeah. They let me in for a little while. And then once I was talking about, okay, where's my royalties? It took me right out of the game.
Nowadays, their faces are censored out of the game, so WWE doesn't have to pay them royalties, which is classy. I find it funny that a Money in the Bank ladder match is technically possible here, years before the 6-man ladder match made its debut at WrestleMania 21. That's points for creativity in the matchmaking. I mean, seriously, we went from 0 gimmick matches to being able to throw together an Armageddon Hell in a Cell. Are you nuts? That's worth celebrating. How about another one? Check it out. More arenas. We got the big old SmackDown fist, the gigantic King of the Ring electric chair throne thing, the backlash swinging hooks, Judgment Day's weird stage, whatever the hell is going on here. That's more major improvement over its predecessor. Breaking the Hell in a Cell door open isn't a triggered, canned animation. Sometimes it seems to open up by itself. You can only climb to the top if you're standing right next to the door, though. What, you thought you could climb literally anywhere in this gigantic structure? What, are you crazy? It drives me nuts that we see champions arrive to the arena with their belts over their shoulder, but they don't come to the ring with them. I guess they leave the belt backstage for safekeeping. I don't know. I remember ages ago reading IGN's review of the game where they mentioned that doing moves off the top of a ladder is one of the most fun parts of the entire package. Good luck with that. The AI is too stupid. You'll never be able to pull it off. And you know what? I have to call something out really quick. Aaron Boulding wrote IGN's review of WWF RAW, the original game. He gave it a 9.1 out of 10. Now, obviously, reviews and scores are just opinions. That's fine. I think a 9.1 is mentally insane, but hey, just a difference of opinion. What's not a difference of opinion is this. Why did Aaron enlist the help of the game's chief development officer in writing his review of RAW 1? What the hell is this about? You don't go asking Ken Levine for help reviewing BioShock. You're not going to ask Neil Druckmann, hey, what should I be thinking about The Last of Us? This is very odd. It's made much worse by the fact that Aaron's review mentions the Royal Rumble match and arena when there is no Royal Rumble match or Royal Rumble arena in WWF RAW. IGN's WWE RAW 2 review was also written by Aaron Boulding, and he gave it the exact same score, a 9.1 out of 10. As you might imagine, nobody else in the industry liked this game nearly as much as dear old Aaron. In the sales department, RAW 2 moved around 500,000 copies worldwide, which is about the same amount the original RAW sold. The game's developer, Anchor Inc., would never release another game, bringing their short life in the video game scene to a close. In 2 titles exclusive to Microsoft's Xbox, in my opinion, WWE was 0-2. I stated last time out that WWF RAW is not the worst wrestling game I've ever played, and that's true, but that's not saying much. WWE RAW 2 definitely offers more variety, and it's not as difficult to land a strike or grapple move, but that's not really saying much. With Anchor Inc. out of the picture, a new team would step in. In 2005, Studio Gigante, a development team founded by Mortal Kombat co-creator John Tobias, would release WWE WrestleMania 21, the third and final WWE game to launch exclusive for the Xbox. Could the third time be the charm, or were Xbox gamers in for the worst offering yet? We'll find out next time. Across the last 2 episodes of Triangle X Squared Circle, we've gone deep on WWF RAW and its sequel, WWE RAW 2. Neither game is particularly good, with RAW 2 falling far, far short of expectations. As a second entry, it should have righted the wrongs of the original, and while there were many more specialty matches and secondary modes, the gameplay was still terrible. After these 2 failures, developer Anchor Inc. were relieved of their WWE duties, with the keys to the kingdom being handed over to Studio Gigante, a team led by Mortal Kombat co-creator John Tobias. On today's episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series, we close out the Xbox Trilogy with the third and final exclusive entry, WWE WrestleMania 21. You thought Raw and Raw 2 were sights to behold? You ain't seen nothing yet. Business is about to pick up. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. You know, today's retrospective is only one of many on the horizon, as the Patreon support project is still underway. We are just a few new signups away from unlocking a retrospective on Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now, if you want to see this come to fruition, just sign up at any level you choose. How about it? And, I guess that's it. That's all the plugging I got. WrestleMania 21, let's get to it. Studio Gigante are the architects behind today's divine creation. This is the team who brought us Tao Fang, the 3D fighting game that was alright. The team led by John Tobias, co-creator of Mortal Kombat. This is a man who had a hand in creating The Pit, Sub-Zero, Scorpion. He's half of Noob Saibot, for God's sake. Anchor Inc. couldn't do it. Raw and Raw 2 both suck. I'm sorry, the gloves are off now. We've got to call a spade a spade. They lost their WWE privileges. Studio Gigante swooped in to blow the doors off the Xbox and finally finally give the owners of this console a great WWE game.
1, 2, 3. That's gotta be the match of the year, JR. 4, 5.
It's a piece of fucking shit. God damn it. Look, I've kept my language clean lately for a long time, really. I protect the F word like it's Roman Reigns. I don't waste it anymore. WrestleMania 21 fucking sucks. I really think this might be the worst WWE game ever made, and that's really saying something with some of the garbage we've covered on this channel. At a glance, you wouldn't think that WrestleMania 21 was the digital equivalent of a stink face. And I'm talking about the Rikishi deal, not one of those Torrie Wilson gimmicks that you give your right arm to take. The graphics are insane for the time. The lighting is interesting, sometimes a little intense. I don't know why the Judgment Day arena looks like we're competing under purple lights, but it's something. It's a calling card. Everything falls apart after the initial impressions of the game's presentation. And tell me where you've heard that before. Why could none of these Xbox games nail down the gameplay at all? They all suck to play. But forget the moment-to-moment gameplay for a second. Coming into this episode, I didn't even know if I'd be able to play WrestleMania 21. Why? Because Studio Gigante was such a fucking clown show that the game shipped riddled with bugs. And I don't mean a frame skip here or a freeze there, though that does happen quite often. I'm talking about the fact that portions of this game are not even accessible on the disc. WrestleMania 21 had a deep career mode where you'd scratch and claw your way to the top. It could have been interesting to take a look at it. And I don't have that option because the game didn't fucking ship with the working career mode. It's blacked out on the main menu. It's completely inaccessible. This is fucked beyond belief. People who bought this game were eventually able to download a patch that claimed to correct multiple issues, and this patch did indeed unlock the career mode, but the servers are long since shut down. The Platinum Hits version of WrestleMania 21 hit store shelves with the corrective patch applied to the disc itself, which means that if I had gone on eBay and bought another copy of this game under that label, we could look at career mode. But I don't fucking think so. Not a chance. So if you came here today hoping that's what I was going to spend a ton of time on, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not buying another copy of this game. I don't even want this copy. I'd like to throw it in the fucking fire. Buy it again, please. Okay, moment-to-moment gameplay time. Did you see that? The opening seconds of the match, I throw a dick punch from 4 feet away, and the collision detection is so bad that Edge sells it as if it landed. Look at Ric Flair and I crashing through the top of the cell. First of all, slow it down. What the fuck are we doing all the way over here? Second of all, we land and I sit up for some reason. Ric Flair actually gets to his feet before I do, and once he's finally up, I fall asleep.
Close, but no cigar.
In a cage match, there's no minigame to escape. There's no meter, no timing deal. You just get to the top and then slow motion. You move like you're trying to sneak over the top of the cage and not make a sound like the opponent is taking a nap and you don't want to wake them up. In a ladder match, we've got one of these situations where you've got to hang from the belt in order to get it down. If the other guy gets up there first, you can't just grab his feet and yank him like in SmackDown or AEW Fight Forever or literally any other good wrestling game ever made. No, you've got to climb to the top of the ladder just to throw a punch to knock him down. Figuring out how to break tables was like solving a puzzle. The buttons to pick up and set down the table simply don't work sometimes. I'm not kidding. It's the damnedest thing you'll ever experience. But once I set the table up, I tried slamming through it. No dice.
Star shows even the slightest hint of weakness, he's lost the match. The choke slam, all the way from hell.
Eventually, by pure chance, I realized that if you grapple an opponent near a table, sometimes, and I stress sometimes, you'll automatically drape your opponent across the table. In my hours and hours of gameplay, it seems to me that a pile driver is the only move in the game that can break a table. And speaking of breaking, where does the table go? It disappears immediately upon impact. It's like we broke the goddamn thing into such small wreckage that it completely disintegrated. But that's not the only breaking we've got on our plate. This game barely runs. Barely runs.
I don't think he can break the hold, Cole. I think he's gonna tap. An incredible finish to an incredible match.
This is real hardware. This is a real Xbox with a real WrestleMania 21 disc. This is not a wonky emulator or a Fugazi recreation. This is legit, but that's nothing. My Eddie Guerrero versus Edge match, I literally thought this Xbox was about to burst into flames. Look, I took a video on my phone because I could not believe what I was hearing. I borrowed this Xbox from a Dan named Kiko Olvera. I thought I was going to have to buy him a new one. All this for the match to eventually load up and for this to happen.
Minneapolis, Minnesota. Hey, Taz, what's your prediction for this match? Soda. 4. 5.
Not to be outdone, Kane and Shelton Benjamin put on a show of their own.
He's stalking his opponent from the top turnbuckle.
There's commentary from Michael Cole and Taz, as well as Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. Sometimes, in certain matches, they're just not here. I have no explanation for where they are, but it's silence in the booth. You want to hear something really bizarre, though? Listen closely to Michael Cole and Taz here.
Besides the win, what's on the line for these superstars in this match?
One word, Cole: pride. Pride. There's a lot of pride on the line in this one. No one wants to be second best.
Man, when it comes to that 5-star frog splash, no one gets as high as Rob Van Dam.
Who the fuck was that? Who said that?
Man, when it comes to that 5-star frog splash, no one gets as high as Rob Van Dam.
That's not Taz, and it's not Michael Cole. Who the fuck said that? We're never gonna get to the bottom of this. There's no way to know. Somebody put this out there as like a video game conspiracy or something. I don't know. What do we do now? Game sucks. We've covered that. You know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to try and find some positives when it comes to WWE WrestleMania 21. Let's do it. One of the main bragging points for WrestleMania 21 was the Pro Reversal system, where instead of the same animation playing for every move that gets blocked, every individual move would come with its own reversal animation. We're talking hundreds of different reversal animations. Now, does it work well? Not really, but it's a good idea, and that's a positive. This sort of timing-based, move-specific reversal system was eventually done well in TNA Impact and WWE All-Stars. Let's talk blood. The juice is loose here in WrestleMania 21, and holy jeez does the red fly. Look at this. I feel like I'm watching Rocky. I feel like I'm playing Mortal Kombat. Hey John Tobias, this was your doing, wasn't it? Honestly, I like seeing the blood in Ric Flair's hair. He was famous for turning his white blonde hair totally red, and there's a bit of staining happening here. Am I reaching for positives? Yeah, but I told you, I'm trying my best. We've got to create a belt feature, which I always appreciate. There's only one strap option, and most of the plates are bizarre amalgamations of pay-per-view logos and mismatched colors, but what the hell? Create a belt. How about it? Physics are always important in fighting and wrestling games, and WrestleMania 21's physics are astounding. Specifically on the female characters. Jesus Christ, this is probably the best part of the game. Do you hate smooth transitions between celebration animations and the rematch menu? You're in luck. Check out how abrupt this is. Are you sickened by action that runs at a perfect 60 frames per second? Hey, WrestleMania 21's multi-man matches are for you. This frame rate is single digits for all you Rough Riders out there. Tired of your shirt? Watch it betray its own existence before your very eyes. I told you I could find positive aspects of this game. Look, come on. Who do you think you're dealing with here? The fact of the matter, though, all jokes aside, is this. WrestleMania 21 is the worst WWE game I have ever played, bar none, no contest. There might be games out there that you don't like WWF Warzone. Don't even try and compare them. WWE Crush Hour, is that a good game? No. But at least it's fun. WrestleMania 21 hardly functions. I don't even feel comfortable calling it fully operational because it's not. I can't even access the fucking career mode. God. We gotta wrap this up. WWF RAW was a letdown, even for a first attempt. WWE RAW 2 really sucked because, as a sequel, it should have benefited from the team's experience. There were more features, sure, but the core gameplay was still atrocious. WrestleMania 21, the last gasp, the final hope of wrestling fans with Xboxes, bursted into the living room and took a shit right on the fucking floor. This is the end of the Xbox trilogy, and the end of WWE on Xbox. Luckily for fans of the green gaming brand, all of this console-exclusive nonsense would be cast aside going forward, allowing Xbox 360 owners to inherit the SmackDown vs. Raw franchise. As a lifelong PlayStation guy myself, I say now to my Xbox brethren, I'm sorry you had to go through this. The Xbox trilogy is worse than being a WCW kid with a PS1, because even if World Tour and Revenge were exclusively on N64, I could just flick the WWF switch and play SmackDown and SmackDown 2. You guys had nothing. Bupkis. Nada. And that's not fair. As a PlayStation guy, I'm glad our SmackDown series made its way over to you. There's no reason we all can't have nice things. Where are the tops of the announce tables? How can those be missing? In what world does... I can't. It's over. The Xbox trilogy is over. WWE WrestleMania 21 reviewed like shit. Everyone with a brain in their head hated it. The game sold worse than Raw and Raw 2, meaning that, luckily, the consumer base learned something from those prior titles. Sure, it was another developer. I don't care. It is what it is. This chapter is closed. This is Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. We've covered some of the classics on here, haven't we? From SmackDown vs. Raw games to WWF No Mercy, Saturday Night Slam Masters to TNA Impact, Showdown Legends of Wrestling to the Def Jam series. We've had variety on variety. 4 years ago, I did an episode on Backyard Wrestling, Don't Try This at Home. A game that promised the insanity you couldn't find in WWE, as well as traditional wrestling, in the confines provided, should you choose to go that route. As we all know, Backyard Wrestling is not a good game. It sucks. It overpromised and underdelivered in practically every area. Today we turn our attention to the sequel, Backyard Wrestling 2, There Goes the Neighborhood. It can't be worse than the original, right? Right? Well, let's find out. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. I do a lot of wrestling content here on 616 Entertainment, and there's a lot more coming your way October 18th, 2023, with the premiere of GM Showdown Season 2. 616 Shockwave and Stokecrow Combustion are back with bigger rosters, more matches per show, crazier storylines, and brand new championship belts on both brands. You don't want to miss it. All of Season 1 is right here on the channel if you want to relive it or experience it for the first time. It's never too late. But GM Showdown Season 2, that's October 18th. That's around the corner. Here and now, it's Triangle X Squared Circle, and it's Backyard Wrestling 2. Let's get to it. Now, I covered the development team who made the Backyard Wrestling games back in that original video, and I don't mean to retread previously charted territory, but that video's from 2019. I can't expect everyone to remember that. So let's hit a quick crash course on Paradox development. Why not? The team who brought us Backyard Wrestling Don't Try This at Home in 2003 had previously put together the X-Men Mutant Academy series, Wu-Tang, Shaolin Style, and more. Have you played any of these games? Let me know in the comments. Sequels need to be bigger. Sequels need to be better. Otherwise, what the hell's the point? So what does Backyard Wrestling 2 do to be bigger and better than the original? Well, the first Backyard Wrestling game, subtitled Don't Try This at Home, served up a fairly eclectic roster. The Insane Clown Posse brought their Juggalo branding to the backyard. We even had an actual television wrestler in Sabu. The underground deathmatch and indie scenes were represented as well through characters like Madman Pondo and M-Dog 20 respectively. Surprisingly, Backyard Wrestling 2 boasts an even more recognizable lineup. We've got former ECW champion The Sandman, former WCW Tag Team champion Vampiro, the dangerous and irresponsible nutjob New Jack, and more. From the independent circuit, most notably Combat Zone Wrestling, or CZW for short, you can't ignore John Zandig or Sick Nick Mondo. The celebrity inclusion has grown too, with porn stars like Tara Patrick and Sunrise Adams joining hard-partying musician Andrew WK. When it comes to playable characters, yeah, I'd say Backyard Wrestling 2 is a step up. But the list of selectable characters will only get you so far. You could put Kratos in Naughty Bear. It doesn't put it on the level of God of War, because the mechanics are still the same. Throw Mario into Big Rigs, you don't instantly have a new Mario Kart on your hands. How does Backyard Wrestling 2 play in comparison to the original? Well, there are certainly differences. We're no longer sprinting around every stage like an erratic lunatic. No, now we've got a turbo meter. If we want to run, we've got to burn some meter. And burning the meter on turbo is stupid, as this meter, when full, gifts us a get out of jail free card. And by jail, I mean grapple. In a pinch, you want that card ready to be played. Submission moves are a new addition, which is funny to think that the first game didn't even feature submission moves, but here they are. Pretty much everyone on the roster has the same few holds in their arsenal, but I guess the bare minimum is enough to brag about on the box art. I'm personally a fan of the pre-match cutscenes that set up the action. Some of them are cooler than others, but hey, this is some attempt at adding a little bit of presentation to the matches. I'll take it. Without question, the best part of Backyard Wrestling 2 is the addition of the environmental grapples. Not environmental, no. Environmental. Trademark. Man, what the hell did that trademark cost? Anyway, grab a hold of your opponent and walk them over toward an object and tap the triangle button. These are cool. I love smashing through tables like this, even if the table does explode before we even touch it. My favorite is pulling my opponent up to the cage wall and hitting a sweet face buster from about 10 feet up. That's good stuff. There's no way to know what is or isn't going to be tied to an environmental grapple. Nothing glows, nothing really draws attention to itself. The only way to find out is to grab your opponent and just drag them around the entire level, waiting for the exclamation point to appear. But hey, what can you do? Speaking of dragging opponents around a level, let's talk about the levels. Sequels need to be bigger and better, right? Well, the first Backyard Wrestling game had 7 levels, and Backyard Wrestling 2 has 10 levels. How do you like that? That's bigger, but is it better? I don't know. Many of them are smaller this time around. The carnival is cool with all of its scaffolding, glass, and tables, but it's so tiny. There's not much room to do anything. The junkyard is bigger, but there's practically nothing to interact with. Is that the trade-off? Here's some space, but nothing to do in it. Here's plenty to work with, but no space to enjoy it. Strange. I like the pool. Tossing a jabroni into the water is fun. Smashing through the buildings like Godzilla at the mini-golf stage is great. And I can't pretend I don't love The Office, with its huge, breakable glass doors, all these desks to smash. And one more, the construction site. I love crashing through the wooden cover over the foundational pit. There's certainly fun to be had, Dan's. Janky, completely broken, very poorly programmed fun, but fun, nonetheless. Thus far, I've been pretty positive, right? I mean, I've been as positive as I possibly can be. Look, Backyard Wrestling 2 is not a good game. It still doesn't feel good to play. The performance is all over the place. I guess I should just show you what I'm talking about, right? This is a video show after all. Idiot. Look, all throughout the game, there are just missing sound effects. There is consistently something completely breaking down in the middle of gameplay. Come here, fucking... What was that? But I don't want anybody in the comments defending this game. More often than not, the AI will have absolutely zero idea what to do in any given situation. Always a sign of great craftsmanship. On the topic of craftsmen, alright, I got some heat from a few very specific people for my comments on lead designer Kevin Gill in the 2019 episode.
Just like, here's a giant yard. You want to shimmy up the drain pipe? Go for it. You want to climb a tree? Go for it. You want to just wrestle traditionally in the confines provided? You can do that. It's offering you all the best of the wrestling genre with none of the limitations.
He's full of shit. And he knew he was full of shit, too. I don't like that. And look, I'm not sorry about what I said. He was full of shit. And that's okay. He's promoting his product. He's trying to sell video games. It's literally his job to put it over the best that he can. I'm not saying I hate the guy, I'm just saying he's full of shit. What I find interesting is that there's a not very well known, not widely circulated Backyard Wrestling 2 trailer that appears to feature Jeff Hardy, despite Jeff not being in the game. I was enamored with this. Was it a purposeful lie? Was it more bullshit from the man himself? Well, I went straight to the source. I asked Kevin Gill himself. The answer I was given regarding Jeff Hardy's blink and you'll miss it appearance in that trailer is this. Gill says that he and Jeff Hardy spoke on the phone for, quote, dozens of hours regarding Jeff Hardy being in the game. He says that, based on their conversations, the development team whipped up a character model and even included Jeff in the career mode cutscenes, despite there being no actual paperwork in place for Jeff to legally license his appearance and likeness to the game. Gill claims that Jeff Hardy then completely ghosted him, going MIA at the 0 hour. obviously meaning that Jeff Hardy had to be absolutely removed from everything. He also threw in that he invited CM Punk to be in the game, though there was never anything in place. I would like to state for the record that I'm inviting CM Punk to be in the next episode of Triangle X Squared Circle. I asked Kevin Gill if he could provide any high-quality materials showcasing Jeff Hardy's character model, as no one has ever really seen it in any sort of detail, but I didn't get a response on that one. Here's another little tidbit from this featurette here on the disc where Gill states that Backyard Wrestling 2 is the first wrestling game to ever feature online multiplayer, when it wasn't. WWE SmackDown vs. RAW was. I find it funny that all throughout this G4 spot, the points being made about Backyard Wrestling 2 open with, hey, people hated this about Backyard Wrestling 1, so we fixed it. And speaking of hate, man, did the Insane Clown Posse hate having to work with New Jack on the promotion for this game.
New Jack is dead, okay? But let me tell you something, okay? You're not supposed to talk about the dead.
No, there's nothing wrong about speaking on New Jack being dead.
Okay,
that's fine. You can speak on him all you like.
New Jack was a dick.
Yeah, he don't count when it comes like that.
Let me be honest. You never saw New Jack at the gathering. New Jack was a fucking asshole.
I did everything I could to stay away from him.
In all of my experience with New Jack.
Oh, yeah.
It was always tension, tense as fuck, and him owning the moment and putting everybody around him in fear.
Straight up, no question.
You know what I mean? We had to spend 2 days with this motherfucker.
He was a lunatic, and he was a super duper cokehead on top of it.
Right.
So without coke, he's already like this. You know what I'm saying? And he's just oozing out of his fucking brain. So and
he told us a story about him doing coke all day and him running out at the end of the day. So he blew his nose and ate that for the extra cocaine residue, you know? And I don't know if we were supposed to be like, hell yeah, New Jack, that's the shit right there, dog. No, that's ill.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
Every great wrestling game has a career mode, right? It's a must-have feature. Sure, some are better than others, but even Backyard Wrestling 1 had its own little talk show mode. Let's take a look at the sequel's offering. The premise is this. The sum of $1 million is being offered to anybody who can become the king of the backyard wrestling circuit. Fun idea, right? But what does it mean when it comes to gameplay? Well, it means that you're going to be faced with match after match after match against generic opponents. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose, as long as you complete a mission. What are missions? They're little requirements that come with each level. You can literally start a match, hit your goal, and then quit out immediately. That's good enough. That counts. Jesus Christ, Dandans. I personally don't even feel like this mission mechanic was explained well at all. I remember beating 11 opponents in a row, not realizing that the game wasn't going to give me a boss fight or take me to a new level. They kept feeding me more opponents because I didn't assign a mission to the string of matches. What a waste of time. Really, the entire mode is a waste. Don't bother with career mode. I do recommend torturing someone with a weed whacker or literally attempting to cut them in half with a chainsaw though. That's fun. I probably don't have to tell you that Backyard Wrestling 2 was ravaged by critics, reviewing even worse than the original installment. In some ways, I think the sequel is slightly better than the original. I like the environmental grapples. But I can also see why the sequel is considered to be a big step down, because sequels are supposed to be bigger and better. The bare minimum changes, the less than exciting additions, and the complete lack of bug squashing from a foundational standpoint, there's just no excuse. The game sucks. It really does. It's garbage, which is a shame. It's okay to like things that suck. Maybe Hannibal Buress said it best.
Some garbage is okay.
It's okay to like things that suck. It's okay to have good memories tied to something that's trash on its own. I got Backyard Wrestling 2 for my birthday, and damn it, I was excited to get it. I popped it into my PlayStation 2, and I had as much fun with it as I possibly could. Did this disc spend as much time on my console as SmackDown? No, absolutely not. Obviously not. But there's nothing wrong with that. I can tell you here today with a straight face and full honesty, yeah, the game sucks. But I don't hate it. The memories tied to it, the goofy silliness you can pull off. It's alright. This isn't Simpsons Wrestling, where the game is terrible and I feel like a dickhead for frustrating myself by even engaging with it at all. At the end of the day, this is a specific type of garbage that I might even have a little bit of affection for. WWE aren't just a pro wrestling powerhouse. They've not only been the undisputed industry leader for 25 years now, but they're a merchandising titan as well. T-shirts and action figures are one thing, but on this show, I focus on the video games. Their first video games ever, WWF Superstars in arcades and WWF WrestleMania at home on the NES, both released in 1989. The early 3D titles like Warzone and Attitude left plenty to be desired. But the next evolution, your WrestleMania 2000s, your No Mercies, and your SmackDowns, they ushered in a brand new era. From 2000 all the way to 2011, every single year, like clockwork, a new entry in the SmackDown series would hit store shelves. But we're not going to fly past all of that. No. In fact, we're going to zoom in on a very specific year. WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2009 came flying off the top rope and reviewed pretty well, as expected by this point. But that wasn't the only game Vince McMahon's Squared Circle Corporation slammed into the homes of fans inside of that window on the calendar. Just a few months later, in March of 2009, for the first time ever, WWE focused a brand new video game on their storied past with Legends of WrestleMania. With a roster comprised exclusively of stars from decades past, going as far as to adorn the game with the classic block logo, this brand new title looked to land itself firmly in the Digital Hall of Fame. Today we'll look back on this one-off Legends entry and either place it amongst the brightest stars of its time, or toss it in the dumpster like Cactus Jack on a Sunday night. Oh, how you doing, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, this is episode 7 of Season 3. Not that that matters, but, maybe if you're new around here after this one, you want to go back and watch some of the old episodes. That's up to you. And if you really like this video, maybe you want to support me over on patreon.com/616entertainment. Every new sign up brings us one step closer to the next in-depth retrospective, and the next one on the list right now is Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Give it some thought. But that's enough plugging at the top. Let's get into the game. I want to do something a little different this time on Triangle X Squared Circle. Rather than kicking things off with the development and behind-the-scenes info, I actually want to dive directly into the gameplay first. And I want to do that because, well, WWE Legends of WrestleMania doesn't play like any other wrestling game you've ever experienced. I have absolutely no idea what the hell they were trying to do here or who it was that signed off on this game's design, but holy God, does this one take a ton of getting used to. You'll notice immediately that this game is centered around what they like to call chains. We can translate chains into what they really are, QuickTime events. Every single major occurrence in your match will take the control completely out of your hands and present you with what is sometimes a 30-second long string of animations. Tapping a lone button when we're told to tap it can take us from a punch to a spine buster all the way through the people's elbow.
It doesn't take long for the pendulum. We could be looking at a pinfall here, folks.
2.
Was that 3? No? Come on.
How about a diving clothesline to an uppercut and directly into a tombstone piledriver? If you're watching closely, and I mean, you can't miss it if you're the one with the controller in your hand because it feels completely disjointed. Maybe you notice that after the clothesline, we're both down. And without a single frame of in-between setup, the uppercut has us both standing straight up in the middle of the ring as if that clothesline never took place. This is a common occurrence with Legends of WrestleMania. I jumped into this episode having never played this game before, so I really needed the tutorials to guide me. I could not believe how overcomplicated these instructions were. Look at this. Are you insane? Have you ever seen this many multi-step lessons in a wrestling game? It took several full matches to get a grasp on what these controls expected of me, and even then, the entire layout felt completely foreign. I have no clue what the mission was with this entire project. In previews, developer Ukes bragged about the simplified control scheme, lauding the chains and the fact that every action we're required to pull off are tied strictly to the 4 face buttons, but it really doesn't feel simplified at all. As a matter of fact, it feels like stacking so many actions on top of just 4 buttons leads to an endless string of, oh, that's not what I meant to do.
Saw battle thus far. Oh, what's going to happen here? The crowd letting Bullcock know how they feel. From head to toe, Animal's an intimidating guy.
I would imagine the pick up and play approach to this new video game was put in place to try and capture the casual wrestling fan. You know, those fans who watch the show and maybe they own an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3, but they don't play all that often. SmackDown vs. Raw is too complicated, but this? Just 4 buttons? I can play this. But you do have to wonder, if they were looking to capture casual fans who own modern consoles, why was the entire basis built around the stars of 20 and 30 years ago, with a logo on the box that these fans don't even recognize? I know there are fans of this game out in the ether. Longtime Dan Mike Masters, co-host of the Something Awesome podcast, how you doing, joked that I should go easy on this game, as he has a soft spot for it. I'll tell you what, Mike Masters, after playing 30 to 45 minutes, I was genuinely wondering if this was the worst WWE game ever made. Not the worst wrestling game ever made, God no. But possibly the worst controlling WWE game ever made. Now, it didn't take long for me to remember that I just recently covered WrestleMania 21 on this series, and, I mean, good lord, that one still takes the cake. It's a rotten cake, to be sure, but it's a cake all to itself. I passed some more time with the game, though, and I don't want to say I started to find my footing. I don't want to say I started to see Legends of Wrestling's merit. I honestly think I was just getting used to its rough, bowling shoe ugly groove. And when I say bowling shoe ugly, I'm not talking about the graphics. Actually, that's a perfect segue, so let's take things in a positive direction. Legends of WrestleMania looks way better than it plays. Dan's, this game is pretty. My goodness. The lighting effects are nice. Check out the fog on Undertaker's entrance. I mean, I don't know why the ring is textured like carpet in some asswipe's bedroom, but I mean, whatever. We're trying to stay positive here. Oh, the belts. My goodness, do the championship belts look great in this game. They shine in the light. The physics when the champ swings it around after a huge win. As a belt mark, I got a smile on my face. Not sure why the belt will instantly morph between the Winged Eagle and whichever title you were actually gunning for in a ladder match, though. Ugh. Staying positive. I got it. Let's take a look at the match types. This game is centered around legendary wrestlers from the past, right? From the 70s all the way up to the 90s. Some of them even worked into the 2000s. They didn't really have gimmick matches through the 70s and 80s. I mean, not to the degree that we see here in Legends of WrestleMania. If I'm looking at Andre the Giant and classic Hulk Hogan with the block logo on the box art, I'm not expecting to see Hell in a Cell, but it's here. It's actually pretty damn cool here, too. Each cell match kicks off with one wrestler challenging the other to start things up on top of the demonic structure. A page pulled straight out of the book of Undertaker and Mankind. And speaking of Taker and Foley, check this out.
Damn! Man, that was close. That was so close. fall from a 30-foot cell.
I've actually never seen the toss off the top of the cell look better in any other game. And I mean that. One more little tidbit, and I'm gonna super Hell in a Cell nerd on you here. Despite the panels looking like the 2006 updated Cage, this cell is actually a nearly perfect recreation of the 1997 original structure, scale-wise. I know, I'm insane, but I love the detail. The aforementioned ladder match makes an appearance, and it sucks. We can't exit the ring for some reason, and the ladder is barely a factor outside of needing to climb it. There's a mini-game for taking the belt down, but I've never needed it even once. I get to the top and the belt is just mine. I don't know. I like that the ladder is a bright color, as that's how they used to be. And it's funny how the ladder match winner gets the belt, climbs down, and then immediately climbs back up. It's so silly. The Royal Rumble is here as well, and holy Jesus Christ, look at this. Do you think there's enough shit on the screen? Each character's HUD is so huge that more often than not, everyone's fighting underneath a health bar. The game will take control away from the camera without any notice, which is always fantastic. I love when I don't even get to choose what I'm looking at. Unreal. So this is where I'll touch on some of the game's development aspects. Look, I thought it was important to cover the gameplay first. Sue me. Everybody knows that Yuke's developed the SmackDown games. They kicked the franchise off in early 2000 and continued working with WWE all the way until the release of 2K19. But with SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 and 2010 sandwiching the release of Legends of WrestleMania, this game must have been made by somebody else, right? Wrong. Yuke's also developed Legends of WrestleMania. And okay, maybe that's not that crazy. We see things like this from time to time. The FIFA and NHL arm of EA Sports also create the UFC game. So it's not like this is the only time this ever happened. It must have just been a different group of people under the Yuke's umbrella that created Legends of WrestleMania, right? Wrong again. A man by the name of Taku Chihaya acted as senior director on SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, Legends of WrestleMania, and SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 inside of one calendar year. Dude, Taku Chihaya is an Iron Man. Goodness me. That was a lot of talk about SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, wasn't it? You want to know one of the craziest pieces of the Legends of WrestleMania puzzle? If you've got an SVR09 save file on your console, you can import the entire modern roster into Legends of WrestleMania. This is insane to me. Now joining Andre the Giant and Rick Rude are Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, John Cena, Randy Orton, and more. Now I said the entire roster, but there are a few guys missing, but who cares? This is incredible. I don't think there's another wrestling game in existence that tells you, hey, you know that other game? Do you want to play as all of those guys in this game? Okay, that's cool. Bring them over. Does this make the game better? I mean, no. There are more wrestlers now, but the quick time events, chains, still seem to be triggered at random. The faces on the select screen are still atrocious. Look at Bret Hart. Who the hell is that supposed to be? This game was way ahead of Mattel in the department of, we can't possibly manage a proper Hitman likeness. Seriously, why can't Mattel manage to create one figure that looks anything like the excellence of execution? The main attraction is WrestleMania Tour mode, where we've got 3 distinct paths: Relive, Rewrite, and Redefine. Relive tasks us with playing out a classic match exactly the way it went in real life. Rewrite, once again, has us playing back history, only this time, we gotta make sure the other guy wins. Redefine is where it all gets crazy. All of these matches come with live action footage of the angle at hand. In this case, it's Andre the Giant versus Big John Studd in their infamous Body Slam Challenge. But Redefine says, forget a Body Slam Challenge. Let's lock these 2 big behemoths inside Hell in a Cell.
He reversed it!
Look at the strength.
Oh my gosh! No one could survive a fall like that!
Andre and Stud, nearly half a ton of flesh and bone, have inflicted big-time punishment on each other.
Andre said that if he loses, he'll retire. But after entering this hell in a cell, win or lose, there's a chance that both men's careers could be over.
And when you're over 500 pounds like Andre, it takes something special to knock you down.
The live action footage is so cool, and each match comes with a list of objectives to knock off, making WrestleMania Tour Mode easily the most interesting feature the game has to offer. Legend Killer Mode requires us to create our own wrestler, legend. God damn, everything has to be so regimented with WWE that legend is a proper noun in place of wrestler or even superstar in this game. We create our guy and head through an arcade ladder of legends. It's just a list of matches. The entire point is to win and upgrade our legend, but I can't say I have any interest in doing this. I've had enough QuickTime events for one day. There is a very specific game that Legends of WrestleMania reminds me of. Despite not selling as well as a WWE game or not being as fondly remembered, it's actually the subject of one of the most popular episodes of this show that I've ever done. The game in question is Showdown Legends of Wrestling. Showdown was the third and final entry in the Legends of Wrestling franchise. It released in 2004, and it's easily the best of that trilogy. Like today's game, it was centered mostly around stars of the past, though it featured ladder matches, table matches, and other features that seemed out of place when held up next to the subject matter. This might be crazy to some of you, but I would take Showdown over Legends of WrestleMania. Showdown is buggy as hell. The controls are absolutely nothing to write home about.
Let's just fight right next to him. Oh God, no! What? Oh. You... Okay, this game's fucking broken. I told you.
Sometimes the buttons simply don't do what they're supposed to do, but this game is oozing with charm. Legends of WrestleMania, at the end of the day, feels like Legends of Wrestling 4, or Showdown Legends of Wrestling 2. I don't know, call it whatever you want. And unfortunately, that's not a compliment. The gameplay is sluggish, it's frustrating, it's boring. Even the cool aspects, like seeing Andre the Giant on top of the cell, can be recreated in other better games. So, what the hell's the attraction? Hey, I can import Jeff Hardy out of SVR 09 and into a game that's not as good. Oh, I guess that's actually what this is. Upon release, WWE Legends of WrestleMania pulled in review scores that were alright. I don't do review scores. I find them to be reductive and stupid. But I do agree that this game probably falls somewhere in the, it's okay section of the scale. As far as sales are concerned, publisher THQ actually highlighted Legends of WrestleMania as a successful brand extension. In the very same report where they announced a loss of $431 million on the fiscal year. After a few more successful WWE games and a highly acclaimed trilogy of UFC titles, THQ would wind up going out of business in 2013. WWE Legends of WrestleMania would never receive a sequel, making this successful brand extension a one and done. At the top of this video, I said we would determine whether this game would be inducted into the Hall of Fame or tossed into a dumpster like Cactus Jack. And I'm the one writing this script, so I'm in charge. And I'm deciding that it doesn't have to just be one or the other. Honestly, this game carries a value of about $10 today. If you're a big wrestling fan and you've never experienced this game before, yeah, it's worth $10. You're not going to spend dozens of hours on this one or discover your new favorite wrestling game here, but $10? Why not? WWE Legends of WrestleMania. Relive, rewrite, redefine, then return to whatever you were playing before. Over the last several years, I've covered just about every Acclaim wrestling game there is to cover, at least when it comes to PlayStation. WWF Warzone, both ECW Hardcore Revolution, and its sequel, Anarchy Rules, On to Showdown, Legends of Wrestling. I created a bit of a problem for myself in that I jumped all over the place. I did not produce these retrospectives in order. So now here we are in 2024, and I've still got one more on the list. Today, we finally knock it out. Warzone was the first WWF video game to climb into the three-dimensional ring, and it was unlike anything we'd experienced up to that point. The wrestlers screamed in pain during submission moves. Vince McMahon and Jim Ross delivered fantastic commentary throughout the matches. We were able to create our own superstars and take them into battle against Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Stone Cold, and more. It may not hold up extremely well today, but for its time, Warzone was special. And 1 year later, the sequel would arrive. WWF Attitude promised more wrestlers, more action, and more, well, attitude. Today, we're gonna go all in. Get it? Oh, how you doing, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. There's not going to be much more to say about Acclaim after this episode, so I hope you're satisfied. I hope you feel like we've gotten it all out. Now, make no mistake, there are still plenty of wrestling games on the list to cover, and I've even considered going back and doing new retrospectives on games that I covered 6 and 7 years ago. You know, brand new videos with a whole new set of eyes. What do you think about that? Let me know down in the comments. And hell, I'm still trying to hit the remaining goals on the Patreon support project. Every new sign up brings us one step closer to the next in-depth retrospective. So if you want to see videos in this style on Metal Gear Solid, the history of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Grand Theft Auto Vice City and San Andreas, and more, sign up over on Patreon at any level you choose, whether it's the cheapest or most expensive level. It doesn't matter. Every sign up counts. But enough talk. Let's get into the game. Now, right off the top, I'm actually going to recommend you watch the Triangle X Squared Circle episode on WWF Warzone if you've A, never seen it, or B, don't know anything about the acclaimed WWF games. I'm not going to talk about the Mortal Kombat dial-a-combo system required to hit big moves here in Attitude, or the health bar that changes color. I'm not going to do that because I already did in the Warzone episode. So you can get all of that introductory knowledge right there. And that's actually a great jumping off point for this episode. WWF Attitude is barely a sequel. I'm sorry, we're gonna get into the negativity right at the top, I guess. WWF Attitude is not a great game by any means. The gameplay has barely, and I mean barely, evolved. It's practically identical. And listen, the skeletal structure of the gameplay mechanics is not something WWF Warzone is remembered fondly for. The frame rate is shit. I'm just gonna call it like it is. The frame rate is all over the place. The game often experiences slowdown for seemingly no reason whatsoever. It's not like it only happens when there are 4 guys in the ring and the game can't handle it. No. In a normal one-on-one, we're oscillating back and forth between the low and high 20 frames per second, which I don't think there's any real excuse for. You know what? Let's make this episode of Triangle X Squared Circle special. Rather than using this entire video to focus on gameplay mechanics that are largely unchanged from the previous entry, let's get into the weirdness right here at the top. Because trust me, WWF Attitude is a weird game. Don't believe me? Here's an example. In Warzone, Jim Ross and Vince McMahon would put the competitors over before a match.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vince McMahon. And I'm good old JR. It ought to be a great matchup.
Oh, boy, Kane's here, and that's going to be hell to pay.
The sky's the limit for this Crimson Beast.
Once a hero in the WWF, now Bret Hart is despised.
This isn't about popularity. He's the king of the hill.
Here in Attitude, the wrestlers add a little color to the experience.
I will destroy your body and claim your soul.
Oh, yes, I know you want me.
You're asking, what's weird about this? All right, you asked for it.
Hey, you know, statistics prove that somewhere in Japan, a woman gives birth to a baby every 4 seconds. I'm gonna go over there and find that woman and put a stop to it.
What the fuck does that mean?
Hey, you know, statistics prove that somewhere in Japan, a woman gives birth to a baby every 4 seconds. I'm gonna go over there and find that woman and put a stop to it.
What the fuck does that mean? No, seriously, do you know? Anybody watching this video right now, do you have any idea what Jerry Lawler is talking about? Why would he say this? What does this have to do with anything? It's a weird thing to talk about in any setting, but let's just say it's true. Let's say the king was backstage reading a medical journal and he brought his thoughts to the ring. Why is he upset about it? Why is he standing across from his opponent, the bell rings, and what's on his mind is, I gotta go to Japan and stop that woman from having kids? I am genuinely bewildered by this whole thing, but we gotta move on. We just gotta move on. Create a Wrestler is certainly deeper here in Attitude than in the previous title. I'll give them that much. We've got many more options in the outfits department, and we can adjust the colors of pretty much everything. This is my guy. I wanted to name him Scuba Steve, but the announcers have the built-in name of Flood, so I wound up using that. Man, Flood would be an awesome name for a creepy creature from the sea sort of character, wouldn't it? Anyway, there are a ton of custom theme songs and voices your character can use in this mode, and some of these songs are unspeakably strange.
I've had my eye on you.
Let's legislate. Yeah, I'm the governor. I'm the governor, baby. And I can take you home to my mansion.
I remember my buddy Bathroom Money Tim Ewers would play the opening lines of this one over and over, based simply on the fact that it sounds like the woman says, "Lick my boobs."
On your knees! Lick my boots!
Clearly, it's "Lick my boots." And we were much too young at the time to realize that this entire song is a sex fetish sort of thing. That went right over our little 8-year-old heads. Man, we should not have been playing this. There's a rumor that the voices your wrestler can use were provided by Road Dogg, but I find that hard to believe.
Timber! Banzai! Thank you for your tax dollars!
Sit back and watch my greatness!
Silence in the court!
Let us touch on, for just a minute, the butt bangers.
Do any of those sound like Road Dogg to you?
Bigger is better! Pin me and pay me!
I've also read that the characters these voices belonged to were supposed to be in the game. They would serve as jobbers in the early goings of career mode, but were cut for some unknown reason. Do you believe me that WWF Attitude is a weird fucking game yet?
How?
This is Kane in real life in 1999. This is Kane in the video game. Look at his beautiful blue eyes. What happened here? Attitude is also the only video game in existence to feature Kane's original voice. For those who are too young and were not there at the time, the Big Red Machine did not always have a normal speaking voice.
I was able to drop you on your head at SummerSlam.
The character couldn't speak at all for the first year of his existence, but in June of 1998, he was able to vocalize his feelings with the aid of an electronic voice box.
I will set myself on fire.
And wouldn't you know it, the voice box made its way into WWF Attitude. What the fuck was the Attitude Era, man? What the fuck? At this juncture, I'm officially going to nominate WWF Attitude as the weirdest wrestling game ever made. At the very least, it's the weirdest WWF game ever made. And from here on out, I'm not going to focus on the weirdness. We've gotten the insanity out of the way. Now we can zoom in on more normal wrestling game aspects. Are you ready for that? I hope so. Full entrances in a 3D wrestling game were pretty damn cool to see at the time, and several of them really stand out amongst the bunch. Seeing the glass break for Austin's entrance is so cool, as this was only done a handful of times in real life. Undertaker's flaming torches are great, as is Kane's pyro in the ring. Something as simple as Edge hopping the guardrail was incredible at the time. Like, wow, he was in the crowd! It blew our minds. Similarly to Kane's voice box, this is the only video game to ever feature Shane McMahon on commentary, at least to my knowledge.
Good night! McMahon, booyah! Out like a light, that moron! Nice move over there by Edge.
There are only 3 arenas in the game, none of which are accurate to the television presentation. Monday Night Raw never had a staircase in place of an entrance ramp, that's for sure. But for another first, we've got the ability to create our own arena. The mode is certainly primitive in comparison to what we have today, but that's to be expected. Simply changing the colors of the ropes and turnbuckle pads went a long way for visual variety back in 1999, man. Let me just throw this out there, though. On top of being one of the weirdest wrestling games ever, I'd like to also nominate WWF Attitude for being the most annoying wrestling game ever made. Listen to this.
Ken Shamrock can't shake the cobwebs out. Man, this action is hot. Ouch! Nice hold. Stone Cold with leverage now. Oh, yes! Yes!
Every single match sounds like this. Nobody ever shuts the hell up in this game. It's unbelievable. There's a career mode here, but it's not what you might expect. We're not looking at storylines or branching paths or anything. It's just a list of matches. I say that a lot on this series, and it's because it's true. The calendar, the rankings, the championship belt in question, it's all just fluff. When it all boils down to just being dressing on a menu and none of it has any bearing on the matches at all, yeah, that's what it is. It's just a list of matches with a bunch of shit around it. We can unlock new characters in this mode like Mark Marrow, Sable, Jerry Lawler, but what's funny is we can't unlock the Hardy Boys. Why is that funny? It's funny because Matt and Jeff did a lot of the motion capture work for this game. Many of the moves we see performed in the ring, the entrance walks, and more, many of these were performed by Matt and Jeff Hardy, but they're nowhere to be seen as themselves. How do you like that? I would be very annoyed if that were me, but, you know, it's not me, so who cares? If you'd like to create your own pay-per-view event, you can, and it's just a list of matches like anything else here. If you're wondering about new match types, there's Last Man Standing, I Quit, and First Blood. We were not quite ready for tables and ladders and Hell in a Cell just yet, apparently. My favorite match to play when I was a kid, for whatever reason, were stable matches. And now, stable matches aren't a thing in real life, so let me explain. You put together 4 teams of 4. 1 wrestler per faction is allowed in the match at any given time, and when they're eliminated, they're replaced by the next member of their faction. You might notice that the health bars drain extremely fast in stable matches, which really helps them go by in a flash. It's exhilarating. I loved to use finisher only as a winning condition. So if you're Mankind, simply applying the Mandible Claw will eliminate your opponent. If X-Pac catches you with an X-Factor, you're out of here. It was high stakes. It was me using my imagination. And that's one of the best things you can do with games like this. Now here's where we'll get serious for a minute. One of the first things we see when we turn the game on is a memorial for the late Owen Hart, who, as we all know, was tragically killed in an accident in front of a sold-out arena. WWF Attitude is the final time Owen Hart would ever be featured in a WWF video game, and as a matter of fact, the memorial message was removed from the Dreamcast port of Attitude after Owen's wife filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the World Wrestling Federation. Classy move, Vince. Classy move. Attitude was actually delayed from its original release so that Acclaim could remove the blue blazer character that Owen was portraying at the time of his death. Oh man. Obviously, I want to give a shout out to Owen Hart. No one has forgotten the King of Hearts, even all these years later. And I don't think they ever will. As you might be able to tell, I don't look back on WWF Attitude very fondly. I don't hate it. It's fine, and it was interesting at the time. We had as much fun as we could with it. But in 2023, it's painfully uninteresting. It's boring to talk about. There's a reason I have focused on what makes this game weird and memorable, because honestly, it's not the gameplay that brings up those feelings. It's funny, I'm actually much more partial to Warzone. And I think it's because Warzone was new and exciting at the time. Even with the smaller roster and less to do, it's more charming. Attitude is barely putting one foot in front of the other as far as sequels are concerned. The World Wrestling Federation would part ways with Acclaim Entertainment after the release of Attitude, turning their attention to Aki on the Nintendo side and Ukes on the PlayStation side. It's a weird technical term that's kind of an insider thing, so I don't know if you'll understand this, but I like to call this type of move really smart. Acclaim would sign a deal with ECW, developing 2 games that were literally WWF Attitude clones with an ECW coat of paint. Learn all about these from the link in the description. Have at it. All in all, Attitude did sell over 2 million copies across every console it released on. And no, I'm not interested in talking about the Game Boy Color port at all. I did not forget, I just don't care. Maybe we'll play it someday, but covering it in depth in a scripted style like this is a waste of time. There's really nothing to it. Some critics loved Attitude, others hated it. Where do you fall on this one? Let me know down in the comments. WWF Attitude. Get it? No, I don't. The Nintendo Gamecube, home to classics like Super Mario Sunshine, Resident Evil 4, The Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, and more. Sure, the console didn't sell well. Who cares? Nintendo pulled the nose up, and they're doing okay today, don't you think? The Gamecube's path crossed with the world of professional wrestling on multiple occasions. Last season on this show, I covered both WWF WrestleMania X8 and WrestleMania 19 in a double-header episode for the ages. Remember the murderous rampage against the construction workers and police officers in Revenge Mode? Man, I still don't know what the hell that was supposed to be. Today, we turn the page and begin the next chapter of WWE's tag team partnership with the Nintendo GameCube. This is WWE Day of Reckoning. How does this title compare to the previous entries in the GameCube's wrestling catalog? Are we about to discover the next legendary main eventer? Or is this an overrated, overappreciated, mid-carder at best, thrust into the spotlight before it was ready? There's only one way to find out. Welcome to Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. 2003's WWE WrestleMania 19 may have featured one of the craziest and most off-the-wall season modes in wrestling game history, but from its graphical style to its gameplay, from its unbelievable roster to its myriad match types, WrestleMania 19 wasn't just a step up from its predecessor. It was a massive leap. When a sequel hit store shelves just 11 months later, fans had to wonder if this third game in the series could replicate such a jump in quality. And yes, this is the third WWE game to hit Nintendo's boxy little purple console. We went from WrestleMania X8 to WrestleMania 19 to Day of Reckoning. I wonder why they dropped the WrestleMania titling. Maybe because WrestleMania season is in the spring, and these games don't typically drop until the fall? Maybe because some of the biggest names on the WrestleMania 20 card had left the company far before this new game released and couldn't be featured in any of the marketing? I don't know. If you line them up, WrestleMania 18 and 19 are GameCube games. WrestleMania 21 was an Xbox game that I covered recently. It's a horrific pile of garbage. And there is no WrestleMania 20 game at all. What an inconsistent, annoying approach to titling. But you don't care about all this, do you? You don't need to be told that Day of Reckoning is another Yuke's-developed, THQ-published WWE game, right? We've been through this. So let's skip it. Let's dive right into the heart of the matter, and let me drop a bombshell right here in the early going. Are you ready? Here it goes. WWE Day of Reckoning is to the Gamecube series what SmackDown Just Bring It was to the PlayStation series. I know, that's a bold claim, but I can back it up. SmackDown Just Bring It was the first game in the franchise to release on the PlayStation 2. It was the third entry in the series on a brand new generation of consoles. Expectations were through the roof. And then the gameplay was practically the same. There weren't really any new match types to speak of, and the story mode, while innovative in its first-person perspective, was extremely short, disappointing millions of fans who were coming from SmackDown 2's seemingly endless season mode. Day of Reckoning is the third game in its franchise. The gameplay is practically a carbon copy of WrestleMania 19's. The number of new match types adds up to a whopping 1, with the spotlight shining on bra and panties. No elimination chamber, no buried alive match, no. Bra and panties. And I don't want to hear that I'm expecting too much when it comes to a buried alive match, as the Survivor Series arena here in the game features the grave right next to the stage. It's right there, man. We've got a story mode that will bore you to tears, more on that later. And I'm just gonna drop this right here as well. Day of Reckoning's roster sucks. WrestleMania 19's pool of 45 playable wrestlers wasn't massive, but it was absolutely stacked with legendary names. Day of Reckoning's playable character count tops out at just 40 wrestlers. We've lost Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, the Dudley Boys, Hurricane, Goldust, Lita, Scott Steiner, and more. In their places are Garrison Cade, the Basham Brothers, Mark Jindrak, and Val Venus. I'm sorry, I mean no disrespect, but this shit sucks. I do mean disrespect to Val Venus. Fuck Val Venus, what a loser. But everybody else, you're cool. It's just that the roster overall is a downgrade. I mean, for God's sake, this is late 2004. The WWE champion on television is John Bradshaw Layfield. Guess who isn't in this fucking game? Jesus Christ. Do you see what I mean? I recognize and even respect the fact that Day of Reckoning's gameplay is great. It's just the WrestleMania 19 gameplay, after all. A game I really enjoy, but everything surrounding the gameplay has either not evolved or, in some cases, has gotten worse. Now, I have more to complain about, so if you're a huge Day of Reckoning fan and you're really upset, you're taking this personally for some reason, I need you to understand that I am not saying this game is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I will reiterate, the gameplay is great, and that's what's most important, above all else. But with a retrospective like this, we are looking back at the entire picture. We're comparing the game to what came before it, and eventually, we'll get into what came after. In many areas, Day of Reckoning falls short. That's just the reality of the situation. I mentioned the story mode earlier, and here's where I'll spend a little more time on it. If you're hoping this is a big turnaround, it isn't. The story mode sucks. We start off by creating our very own WWE superstar and selecting a brand we'd like to compete for. As a rookie, a noob, a jabroni, we're brand new. We don't get to just step into the spotlight and main event SummerSlam. No, we're gonna hit the house show circuit, competing against generic nobodies. Every match comes with a task like hit your finishing move, or reverse 2 grapple attempts. After spending far too long on the live events, we get a crack at Sunday Night Heat. Time to up the ante, right? Time to gain some freedom. Nope. Even after the game tells you to your face that it's aware that what you're doing is boring, it tells you to keep doing it. Work Matt Hardy's leg. Hit your finishing move twice. This is ungodly boring. There's zero substance here. Noted sex pest Vince McMahon telling me he doesn't care about anything I've done anywhere else, none of that matters, and that here, I'm a nobody. I was like, oh, they should have just called this WCW Star Signs with the WWF Simulator. That's what it feels like. Eventually, depending on which brand you chose at the beginning, you'll either get involved with Evolution or the Ministry. It's worth noting that there are no vocal performances in the story mode at all. Dialogue is delivered through text 100% of the time, which I find unacceptable, seeing as though WrestleMania 19 featured plenty of voice acting. When it comes to commentary during matches, there is no commentary during matches. The licensed soundtrack is great at first. I mean, who doesn't pop when they hear Breaking Benjamin or Zebrahead in a WWE game? But it gets old really fast. There are only 10 songs on the entire soundtrack, and the song changes between every loading screen. There are tons of loading screens here, so the songs are constantly starting over from the beginning. The songs play over the menus, they play during story mode cutscenes, they play during your matches. Eventually, you can't fucking escape it. I had to go into the options and turn the music off. I'm not kidding. It was driving me crazy. Positives. Let's talk about what's good, outside of the game playing really well. Graphically, Day of Reckoning excels. The lighting effects have been overhauled with deeper shadows and richer colors. I personally prefer the look of WrestleMania 19 with its brighter, exaggerated style, but Day of Reckoning definitely looks more realistic, if that's your thing. There's a negative effect that pops up when a devastating finisher is landed, and I really enjoy the fact that this happens very rarely. It makes it feel special when it does occur. Create a Wrestler mode here is super deep, without a doubt the best CAW mode on the Gamecube thus far. That's a plus. And as I've bragged about in the past, the Gamecube has always been the home of a fantastic Hell in a Cell match. If you don't think this pedigree I landed through the roof of the cage is a 10 out of 10, lose my number. I'd go as far as to say that all of the arenas look excellent, from the big and flashy WrestleMania 20 stage, all the way to the basic and bland house show set. I appreciate the variety. These arenas, all of them other than Raw and SmackDown, need to be purchased with cash earned from the story mode, so yeah, you have to play the story mode to enjoy these arenas, unfortunately. I think the single best thing to come from Day of Reckoning's existence, honestly, might be the John Cena commercial.
There's a new game, and it's tearing the streets up. Lace your boots if you think you can keep up. Bra and panties match with a diva stripped down. Build your character so strong, opponents skip town. But y'all rookies got a lot to learn. You ain't guaranteed fame, what you get you earn. It's a school of hard knocks where you pay your dues. Toughness is measured in your black and blues. Starting small time gyms where your chances are slim. Or rocking a leather belt laced with gold trim. The world title, you got the guts to take it. It's a cutthroat game, very few make it. You in the weak games, man, this ain't you. This is real life passion, THQ. The Legends roster stacked with Hall of Famers. Tough enough to beat even polished gamers. A bunch of superstars, SmackDown and Raw. They ready to fight, we gon' crack down your jaw. I'm your number one choice, man, your boy is sick. With moves so hot, I light up your joystick. Everybody else is lame, dude. They can't see me, I be running the GameCube. Day of Reckoning's coming, remember I told you. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. GameCube.
Rated T for teen.
There you go. See, I'm putting Day of Reckoning over. It's a fine game. I just think it has a little higher of a reputation than it really deserves. Can anyone tell me why the character select screen is not in alphabetical order? What was so bad about that simple convenience that they needed to remove? Look at some of these faces. Are you trying to tell me that this resembles Edge in any way? Shawn Michaels looks like he was poorly sculpted from clay. What is with... You know what? I'm sorry. I'm done. It's a good game. It's fun to play. The different sets and arenas look excellent. We've got the tried and true steel cage, Hell in a Cell, tables, ladders, and chairs, Royal Rumble, and more. The issue is that there's almost literally nothing new to do here. At all. As a singular video game, it's good. But as a sequel, as the third installment in a franchise, I don't think you can look at this as anything but a disappointment. It's a graphical update, it's a roster refresh, and a terrible one at that. I just feel that for the first time ever on the GameCube, WWE had found its Madden equivalent. There's barely anything going on here differentiating this from the prior installment, and that kinda sucks. You know what didn't suck? The reviews. Critics enjoyed this game, lauding the graphical leap but burying its selection of wrestlers. Hey, where have I heard that before? The game sold about 450,000 copies, a far cry from the 2.8 million that its PlayStation 2 brother moved, but like I said at the top, the GameCube itself didn't sell well at all, so the install base was much smaller to begin with. 1 year later, another sequel would arrive. WWE Day of Reckoning 2 would be the final WWE title released for the Nintendo GameCube. Would the curtains close to a standing ovation, or would WWE be booed out of the Nintendo arena? We'll talk all about it next time. In 2005, the Nintendo GameCube was not only an official disappointment from a sales perspective, but it was on its last legs as well. Rumblings of the mysterious revolution were getting louder and louder, while the PlayStation 2's numbers soared to record heights and the Xbox 360 was nearing its launch. This boxy little console was on its farewell tour, and with World Wrestling Entertainment by their side, Nintendo were looking to close out their GameCube in-ring career on a high note. With an impressive trilogy of games already in their wake and a fourth on the horizon, the trio of Ukes, THQ, and WWE knew one thing. This final entry had to be a banger. On today's episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series, we dive deep into WWE Day of Reckoning 2. Let me open up by saying that the comments section was extremely reasonable on the previous episode. In taking an honest, fair, and balanced look at the first Day of Reckoning game, I found its roster to be awful, its soundtrack to be shallow and repetitive, the story mode could be described using the exact same words, but the gameplay overall was great. It's a good game, no doubt about it, but it's not above some well-deserved criticism. Many of you agreed with me, stating that the prior title, WrestleMania 19, as well as today's topic, Day of Reckoning 2, are far superior. There were those of you who disagreed with me, and that's totally fine. We all have our own taste and opinions. Those of you who took my critiques of the game personally for some odd reason, I don't know what to tell you. That's something you need to figure out on your own time. I open with these statements because I don't want to bury the lead. I want to make my overall opinion of Day of Reckoning 2 very clear from the very start. This game is awesome. Holy hell, Day of Reckoning 2 deserves every single bit of the praise it has garnered over the years. It's a fair question to wonder what the big differences are from the previous entry in the series, so I don't mind doing a quick comparison. Let's rapid fire. How about it? Let's flash back. The licensed soundtrack is great at first, but it gets old really fast. There are only 10 songs on the entire soundtrack, and the song changes between every loading screen. There are tons of loading screens here, so the songs are constantly starting over from the beginning. I had to go into the options and turn the music off. I'm not kidding. It was driving me crazy. Here in the sequel, the licensed, recognizable music has been removed almost completely. Hard-rocking, heavy-hitting bangers rage on in the background, which honestly fits the feel much better, and the repetition isn't as obvious. Day of Reckoning 1's story mode was slow and mind-numbingly boring, trudging through house shows before graduating to Sunday Night Heat, where we're given the most menial tasks to carry out during matches. Day of Reckoning 2's story mode, while fairly short in length, is much more interesting, far more exciting, and just a lot more fun to play. More on this later. And the last comparison I'll hit you with here at the top is the roster. Day of Reckoning 2's roster has beefed back up to 45 wrestlers with Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, Chris Masters, Heidenreich, JBL, Christy Hemme, Tori Wilson, Kenzo Suzuki, Rene Dupree, The Hurricane, Gene Snitsky, and more joining the team. Do you see what I mean? Even from a surface level glance, we can see how much of an improvement this fourth WWE Gamecube offering is, which certainly doesn't piss me off. I said we'd check back in on the story mode later, and, well, the time is now. The marketing materials would have you believe that this story mode picks up where the previous title left off, but that's not really accurate. A considerable amount of time has passed, for one, and secondly, we can't import our created wrestler from the original Day of Reckoning. How am I continuing where I left off if I have to make a new guy? And the world title that I worked so hard to win at WrestleMania, I just lost it at some point, and I'm kind of back in the mix again. It's a little disingenuous, but luckily, that's my greatest complaint with the story mode. Outside of that, this is a great time. We're not relegated to boring, pointless, borderline tutorial-esque matches for hours at a time. Instead, we're opening a tournament for the World Heavyweight Championship amongst the biggest stars on the Raw roster. We eventually head to the main event of WrestleMania against Triple H, the world title on the line, and it turns out somebody stole the championship belt out of Eric Bischoff's private office. Hilariously, the main event of WrestleMania is cancelled, and Raw is without a champion. From here, there are a number of different angles for us to get involved in. Going after the Intercontinental Championship is an option, or do we take it to Edge for disrespecting our girlfriend, Stacy Keibler? Look, nobody disrespects Stacy Keibler. I'll pass up gold any day for Stacy Keibler. You kidding me? I was going to do a whole bit here, but I'll just cut it short before it gets out of hand. I'm just saying. Stacy Keibler? Jesus Christ. I won't spoil the entire story mode for you, but the branching paths continue, the stakes get higher, and overall, it's a lot of fun. Plus, this is how we unlock new arenas and new wrestlers, so the rewards stack up nicely as well. Okay, if I have one more tiny criticism, practically every angle follows the same structure. Singles match, tag team match, pay-per-view blow-off. This gets old. It's annoying, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. You know what's awesome? The blood. Oh man, it comes in stages, so the first level is gnarly, but we're just getting started. Full-on gushing leads to pools of blood collecting on the canvas, which just looks absolutely brutal. I'm also a fan of the new submission system, where it's up to the player to decide what exactly you're trying to accomplish with a hold. You better not get predictable though, because if your opponent can correctly match your input, they'll escape immediately. The graphics from the top on down have vastly improved once again. You thought Day of Reckoning looked more realistic than WrestleMania 19? Day of Reckoning 2 looks way better than Day of Reckoning 1. It's kind of crazy. Look at the character models. Rob Van Dam looks awesome. A far cry from whoever the hell this was dressed up as Edge in the last game. The lighting's a little strange. I don't know why it's so dark in here. This is certainly not what the WWE television broadcast looked and felt like, but whatever. What really stands out to me are the camera angles. This game is incredibly cinematic in its cuts, but what's even more impressive are the options for the hard cam. Here's our standard viewpoint, just like on TV. If you want to get old school and have the entrance stage play as your backdrop, switch over to it. Pretty cool, right? But how about this? The corner cam. I don't think I've ever seen this angle in another game. And you might feel like it looks a little disorienting. I can imagine you might be skeptical about how this messes with the controls, but it really doesn't at all. You'll still whip your opponent into the ropes or the corner that you meant to every time. I don't know how it feels so good, but it does. I love the variety. I also love that we finally have a ring announcer. Tony Chimmel sounds excellent.
Weighing 252 pounds, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
There's still no commentary during matches, and the story mode dialogue is still delivered entirely through text, which Ukes claimed was due to the Gamecube's limitations, but I don't buy that at all. Games like Resident Evil 4 had no problem with tons of dialogue fitting on a disc, so I don't want to hear it. And you know what? Good. Perfect timing. Let's use this to springboard into my criticisms of Day of Reckoning 2, because despite all the praise I've heaped on it thus far, that's not to say it's perfect. The stamina system. Some of you just went, here we go! Yeah, the stamina system sucks. I'm not saying that this can't be implemented well. I mean, look over at the PlayStation 2. The SmackDown vs. Raw series introduced a stamina system where holding the select button down would rapidly replenish your energy, allowing you to jump back into the action quickly. The reason Day of Reckoning 2's stamina system is a major pain in the ass is because there is no replenishing button. Here, we literally just have to stand still and wait. We wait and wait and wait. Do not get busted open by your opponent either, as losing blood makes your stamina come back so much slower. Jesus, this sucks. Speaking of the SVR series over on the PS2, let's get into match types. It's late 2005 at this point. The SmackDown vs. Raw games have just introduced parking lot brawls, fulfill your fantasy, the buried alive match, general manager mode. The steel cage match has been reworked completely, but none of that is here on the GameCube. 4 games into this series, and the selection of new match types hasn't grown almost at all. And the steel cage, holy jeez. Those of you who have played through this story mode remember the fatal 4-way cage match at SummerSlam all too well. This match is infamous for ruining many players' experiences, as if you haven't allocated enough attribute points into your speed column, you are screwed. Seriously, you will not be able to win this match, and you'll have to start over from the beginning. That sucks. Why is it that after we score a pinfall to win a match, we lift the opponent's head off the mat as if we're breaking the pinfall? Why? Why does this happen? Very annoying. Paul London rushes to the ring so quickly that Tony Chimmel can't even finish his introduction.
The only way to win this match is to climb the ladder and retrieve the belt. Introducing first from Austin, Texas, weighing 195.
Why does Paul London's theme song sound exactly like the 616 version of the hymn track Endless Dark? And what the hell is going on with William Regal's theme song? As you can see, the issues I have with this game are pretty minor. They pale in comparison to the prior outing, and that's a good thing. This is a good sequel. This is what a sequel is supposed to be. Plus, this game has Fifi coming out with Rene Dupree. What, are you kidding me? Shout out to Fifi. That's bonus points right there. My personal stories and recollections are a huge piece of what sets my retrospectives apart from anybody else's. You could make a YouTube video about Day of Reckoning, you know? Anybody could do it if they wanted to. That's why I share my memories with you guys. I like to pull those moments from the past and kind of, I don't know, stitch them into the fabric of the present, in a way. I haven't been sharing as many personal stories over these last 2 episodes because I didn't own a GameCube while these titles were releasing. I wish I did. There are a great number of GameCube bangers that I just have to believe are bangers because I've never played them for myself. Listen, I found Wario World at a local shop the other day and I was so excited. I wanted to play this game forever. And then I saw the $100 price tag and I put that shit right back down. I don't think so. And yes, I looked it up. $100 is not unreasonable for what that's going for in the secondhand market these days. So it wasn't the store's fault. The Gamecube, at this point in time, has become prohibitively expensive to engage with, which kinda sucks. If you already own the system, I would like to report that every single WWE game is still reasonably priced on the secondhand market, so if you want to check these out, by all means, go for it. But the glory days of the GameCube, they've come and gone. They came and went almost 20 years ago, as a matter of fact. The Nintendo Revolution, later officially titled the Nintendo Wii, would release just about 1 year after Day of Reckoning 2 hit the GameCube in November of 2006. WWE would not release a single exclusive video game on this motion control based console, bringing the tight-knit tag team of Nintendo and World Wrestling Entertainment to an end. At least on the exclusive front, you know what I mean, right? So did the curtains close on the GameCube's in-ring career with confetti falling from the ceiling to raucous applause, or to an empty arena sitting on their hands? Well, I'm happy to report that WWE Day of Reckoning 2 once again reviewed very well. The improvements made over the prior title did not fall on deaf ears, with the story mode earning high compliments across the board. Sales-wise, this final installment didn't sell all that well, moving about 350,000 copies, down considerably from the first Day of Reckoning, but who cares? It's in the past. The legacy that began with WWF WrestleMania, the legacy that carried us over to No Mercy, ends here with Day of Reckoning 2. What a run, Dan-Dans. The end of an era. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. I didn't say anything before, but this was the Season 3 finale. After an entire year and 10 full-length episodes, now it seems like the perfect time to call this the finish. When will Season 4 kick off? Well, I mean, how about next month? Yeah, I'm not trying to take a long break, it's just a good time to close the book on Season 3, you know? I've got a great episode lined up for the big Season 4 premiere. I mean, you've heard of this one, haven't you? Yeah, I thought so. Dan-Dans, thank you for watching. Please consider signing up and supporting me over on Patreon. I could really use your support, and hey man, we're only a few new signups away from unlocking the history of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. What, are you kidding? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.